And we should be live. Welcome, everybody. I'm super excited. Well, I guess I don't really need to talk to everybody because I'm here to talk to you, Dennis. How's it going, man?
Awesome, man. I'm super excited.
Yeah. What are you working on these days?
Just trying to get some courses out. Got into collaborating a little bit. You saw my stuff with Brad Traversy. It's kind of cool. Feels weird to finally be put in the spotlight after watching people like you for so long. Yeah, it's all new to me, man. Getting all
The
this kind of
the
attention.
spotlight. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Have you been recognized in public yet? Like, has any of your audience ever seen? Oh my gosh, Dennis. That you're Dennis. You're Dennis Ivy or Ivanov. What's up, man?
No, but I can't imagine that. Not yet.
It's happened to me one time, right? I've been doing this for 7 years, and the reason I bring this up is because some people think like I get recognized from time to time very often. I'm like, no, 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 that doesn't happen. I'm not famous at all. Only a few people know me. You happen to be one of them. But it'll be surreal once you do when it does happen to you, and they're like, oh, do you know this? Because initially for me at least it was like, wait a minute, do I know you? Like, did I know you in college or something? And that's kind of how it felt. But
Yeah, I remember you telling that story, in another live stream or sharing that some guy
you
in
heard
Dallas,
that?
or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
That's funny. Thanks for coming on some of those live streams. So how'd you land this with Brad? Like like how'd that come about? Do you know Brad previously or?
No, so I think right around I started YouTube around probably November. So I'm about my 1 year anniversary right now of like being active on YouTube and really doing this. And
Wait a minute. Wait. Oh, I didn't know this. Wait a minute. So you started YouTube in November?
Actually October 16th, 2019. I had a few videos out before, but it was under a different channel. So this is like, yeah, like I'm right on that point.
Oh man, you are just crushing YouTube because
Yeah.
I started YouTube in 2014, and you're right behind me in subscribers. Basically, it's crazy, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah, I went
Good
after
for
it
you.
hard. I mean, after we can probably get into that later, but after my website sale, doing all that, that kind of gave me that push because I went full time into that. I'm sure you had other things. You probably had a job doing what you had to do, but I was able to just go 100%, take that money, not get a job, and just go into it.
No, honestly, I didn't respect YouTube as much as I should have from the get go. Right? It was like always a secondary type thing for me that I did so much on Udemy at first, Kickstarter, and my own platform. YouTube was like, yeah, I guess I'll do some social things, which is like absolutely the wrong method, as you can see with what you've done. So wait, when you started what were your first few videos then?
So the first video that was like officially under my channel after I changed the name from what I had it previously was
Which was
just
that? What was
it
that?
was a JavaScript video.
I'm going to interrupt you constantly. I hope you know that.
So no,
What
no
was your
worries.
original name?
So it was a hello world. So it was supposed to be or say hello world. It was just like
Got it.
coding something kind of catchy. But yeah, then I figured if I brand myself as my own name, it's a little bit more personable for people. So kind of easier to get traction because a brand name doesn't really pick up as fast. So yeah, it was under Hello World. So in that first video or my first few videos, you'll see it in like my desktop background. This little logo that I created in like 2 seconds.
Dude, that's hilarious.
You're not looking it up, are you? You
Oh,
shouldn't.
I'm absolutely looking it
Oh,
up.
man.
I gotta see this thing, man.
I started it with a blog originally too. I just started writing. I mean, when I was learning, my original point was just to document this,
Yeah,
just to kind of like as I'm learning, if I'm able to explain it, I can grasp that concept. So I started writing those out.
dude, that I advise that to anyone who's learning. I get this question all the time. Like, if you're learning and you're really struggling to really fully understand everything, just start documenting, writing it. Like, because these questions, the way you have to explain it, really brings it in nice and clear for you. I'm assuming that's your experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The second you're explaining it, you're asking questions that you normally that your brain doesn't just logically think about. You're just trying to get something done. But it's like that. I've heard the analogy using a rubber duck. If you're talking to something, trying to explain it, or you also talked about explaining things to your wife or sharing ideas. I just talk and she listens, has no idea what I'm saying. But when I'm trying to elaborate a concept, I say things that aren't my brain doesn't catch. So yeah, it really
Dude,
picks up a lot.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see here. One of your top videos, there it is. You sold your website for 40K.
Yep.
Congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank
That is
you.
like such a great way to like just really dive into building a whole new thing, right? Like
Oh man,
whole
that
new
was,
life.
yeah, that was one hell of an experience. That was
Look
crazy.
at this. A simple
Yeah,
contact form. Hey, that's
look at
that's
that logo right there. Look at that on the bottom right.
oh this
Yeah. So
that is awesome. But I mean to me this like yeah.
there you
This goes to
go.
show you that, I mean, if you look at Google's early stuff, if you look at Facebook's early website, Twitter, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter how you start. It's just how you keep going. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like the internet is a good example of how you can see results in such a short amount of time. And you're like a really good example of that, obviously. So we got off track a little bit. How did you meet Brad?
Brad, yeah. So once I started that, I got to about 800 subs, I think, at one point, and I felt like this was such a far street or far reach right here. But I started emailing people like you. So you were the first one, I think, and then I emailed Brad. I think I emailed the Net Ninja at one point too, Sean, and I just wanted to do a collaboration because I thought, okay, these are my idols. If I can reach out to them and try to get featured on their channel, it'd be really cool, and I get to meet them. So I sent out probably about 7 emails, one to Free Code Camp. They didn't respond to me, but you and Brad, I think, were the only two that replied, like really quick. And at first, you were just like, "Hey, man, really cool what you're doing, but we'll see." You kind of gave me a, "We'll look into it," and I totally get your point. This guy comes up to you with a small account, you don't know if he's gonna be around for a while. So what his
Well, in all
content's
honesty,
like, yeah.
Dennis, it was nothing against you. It
Oh
was
no,
just,
I get that.
it was just for a long time. I've had this policy of I'm just not collaborating with people I don't know, which I think is like a flawed policy, especially when you go on YouTube, which is why talking to you and you getting me into that group or trying to get me into that group,
Yeah.
like these sorts of things. Since I've been doing it for over 7 years, I'm like really skeptical to join new things because you'll see this as you start to get a lot more traction. You get spammed a lot to do
Yeah,
things. That
I
you
get
don't really
those.
want to.
Yep, I get those right now, and I'll look into their channel too. And you don't want to be rude, but if the content doesn't fit what you're trying to do, I totally get it. So, yeah, being from the business side, I'm used to rejection. I totally understand it. I know what I'm doing here. It's
For sure.
to be expected. Yeah. So yeah, I reached out, and Brad kind of gave me the same answer as you. He was just like, looks really cool what you're doing. Maybe we can get back to this a little bit later. I've considered that before doing something Free Code Camp style, and we just kind of kept in contact. I reached out to him a few times, didn't want to bug him, and then one day he said yes. So he started that collaboration with all those. You saw that playlist, I'm pretty sure now.
Yeah.
With all those content creators, yeah. So I don't know if I was the first one that he agreed to, but it took me a while to get my video out. So I ended up being video number 3 after Gary Simon and Kyle from Web Dev Simplified. But yeah, that's kind of the story there. We've kept in touch and got to meet a bunch of people once I kind of got to a certain point. So that was fun.
Yeah. I mean, like, oops, let me move that. Brad has quite the following. Right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he's done a really, really good job. I very much admire the work that he's put in, and that's really cool that you've been a part of that too. Because something
it's
else,
an honor.
something else as like YouTubers, but programming YouTubers, and you've been doing this really well. Is we need to like look out for each other and actually help elevate the whole ship because there's so many people that they watch one video and that hooks them. You know what I mean? And I thought I could be that person for everybody, which is like super flawed, obviously, in the realm of Django specifically, right? Because it definitely happened for a number of people. But what I've realized over the years is like this is not a zero-sum game at all. This is so much more like there's a huge opportunity. So I'm really speaking to many of you that have smaller channels that are programming like YouTubers that want to just get it out there, make it happen. You absolutely should spend the time to do it because you'll never know where it goes, right? I think, Dennis, you're right there. Like, what if you didn't start a YouTube channel? What if you never sold your course or your website, excuse me? I think about these questions a lot too, in the sense that when I started coding for entrepreneurs, it was just a weekend. I'm like, all right, look, I got a friend that's doing this code weekend, boot camp thing. they're going to try and start launch a business. I think it's called Startup Weekend. Actually, they're trying to launch this business in a weekend. I think I could launch my course in a weekend, and that's what I did. And 7 years later now, I'm still doing the same thing. It's made a career for me. I think it's really just that simple. And you're a really good example of that.
Yeah, I think everybody wins too, as far as the content creators, and going back to the collaboration stuff.
Sure.
You'll notice. I mean, you say it all the time. I say it, you don't lose when new people come on board. It's not, you are competing in a sense, but everybody wins because I constantly watch other people's stuff. Whether is that my feed?
Yes. It looks like we're losing you a little bit.
And my tech guy is out too.
Oh no. Okay. Well, I'm still here. So maybe would be a good time to acknowledge the fact that, hey, sometimes problems happen on live streams. If you guys have ever been on with me before, you would have known this. Dennis, maybe try refreshing your connection. Just reload the page and see if you actually come back in and do all that on our live stream itself. So.
Yeah. Okay. Let me. Give that a sec. So.
Sure.
Yeah, that streams out.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone for watching. I hope you're enjoying it so far. Technical difficulties happen all the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to look at some of these questions here that you guys have. But make sure you do have questions, right? So we are going to definitely get into some of the live Q&A. And that's probably going to be a little bit later once we get this sorted with Dennis's side of the video. We just lost the connection. That's all. That happens. So while that's happening, let's talk about something that I think is really cool. This is the fact that we've got Tesla starts relieving their full self-driving beta rollout. Like, they're going to be starting to do full self-driving. I can't wait to talk to Dennis about this from his perspective on a business side of things. But like, the idea that Tesla's starting to do the full self-driving, I think is going to be a radical shift in the way we live our lives. You know what I mean? Like, I really, really do.
Justin, am I back on?
Looks like we got you, Dennis.
Okay, good.
I feel like I have a few feeds from you. So can you actually jump off one of them?
Yeah, 1 second here. Sorry about that. I guess you can continue entertaining the crowd.
There's a slight little echo too, just so you know. That's probably the two feeds. But yeah, so this full self-driving thing.
It's giving me two screens right now.
Yeah, and we got your mic coming in twice too.
Oh shoot. Mic's doubled up too.
I
think you're recording it. So sorry about this, Justin.
Hey, if it's not live, it's this is how it goes. I can't believe like how many times, not just I've done things like this where it's like, hey, man, we're in the middle of a live broadcast. What's going on? But this is part of the process of doing all this stuff, and it wouldn't be a first one if it wasn't. But anyway, so back to the Tesla full self-driving beta rollout. It's really, really cool because we've got another dramatic shift in how we're going to live our lives if this actually does work in the next few years. And it's going to happen really, really fast. So if you think that like Uber and Lyft happened quickly, this is going to happen so much faster, right? So I'm like really curious to see how this works out and how this plays out. And I really want to see what you guys think about this. And now that we've got Dennis back, maybe we can just jump into it.
Am I still echoing?
No echo, and I only got one feed from you.
You're good. Perfect. So we're all good.
Yes, we're good. We're back. 30 seconds, no big deal.
Cool. You're a natural, man. You totally went into anchor mode right there.
Anchor man.
No, yeah, as far as like keeping the audience.
No, totally. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure people like understand. It's like the live streams, and I think I lost your feed again. And we got two feeds from you again. So
two feeds.
I know, that's what I said.
Yeah. So hey Dennis, while you're getting it sorted, could you just mute your mic? I'll just keep talking.
Yeah, let me mute this. Yep.
Sure. So this full self-driving, the way I see it is every store is not necessarily going to really be concerned with this big giant machine necessarily, right? But if we can solve it as a big machine, then it can actually get to really, really small machines. So we're talking like actually Roomba style things that will do pick and place for us. Now, if you're not familiar with pick and place, what I mean by that is literally going to the store and grabbing something that you are wanting and then loading it up and bringing it to you. Now, if somebody's not in the loop on this, like a human's not in the loop on this, it might sound like, oh, all these people are going to lose jobs and stuff like that. I actually don't think that's the case. What I think would really happen is the people, instead of them going and grabbing the pick and play stuff, they'll be able to take a look at 100 things and verify really, really quickly that those things are correct, and then it'll go in to where they need it to go. You know what I mean? So yeah. All right. So still getting this all sorted, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out on this.
You got my audio?
Yeah, we got 2 audio streams from you now, Dennis.
Oh man, yeah. Sorry, I don't know how I'm gonna be able to get this up and going. We're gonna try it, but if you wanna cut it and try it later, if we can't figure it out.
No, let's keep going. Just quit out Chrome, try that, and then come back and see if that ends up working. If not, then I'll just jump on to live Q&A with everybody else, and we'll just move that.
Sure. Let me try reloading it completely.
All right, cool. Yeah. So going back to the self-driving thing, I think it's huge news, and I'm really, really excited for it. But that's not all that actually came out recently. Another one is NASA landing on an asteroid. So if you guys haven't seen this is also incredible, right? So NASA landing on an asteroid means that we are going to see potential asteroid mining. So that also means that the raw materials or the rare metals and stuff like that we have now, maybe we're going to be getting a lot of those things back in our like local environment and stuff like that. So, looks like Dennis is back.
I think I'm good. No echo?
No echo. Volume down maybe a little bit?
Yeah, let me do that.
Cool. Did restarting Chrome end up helping?
Yeah, just resetting it. How's that volume?
That's good. It's good.
Better?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, let's see. Where did we leave off? Well, I'm just going to jump into this like self-driving like thing that's happening in the world. Do you think about this a lot, or what's your?
It's a little bit out of my league, honestly. I watch it. I'm super, it does captivate me, but you definitely have a better understanding of that. I just kind of watch it from afar one day.
Got it. So what we were talking about before we jumped on was that before we actually went live is that you don't consider yourself a techie. So I need to hear more about this.
Yeah, so I can actually elaborate on that just because of the business side. This is where you and I connect. I'm business first. When I was I started working very early, probably like at 7 years old, paper routes, stealing jobs from my brothers and mowing lawns, doing stuff like that. But when I got into tech, it was purely from the business side. I loved what it can do. I saw that it was going to be the future. So this is what I was going to be.
Just interrupt. Can you bring it down a little bit more? Getting some feedback here. Not feedback, but excuse me. It's just the volume's loud.
So the input is a little bit too loud. Yeah.
Input's too loud. Yep. How are we doing now, everyone?
Is this changing the input at all?
That's better. Yeah, I think that's better.
Okay, better.
Yeah. This is why I want a studio. This is not the only reason, but like I really want us to have like an awesome conversation, but not have to worry about all the things to make that happen. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
Luckily, the Riverside, I've got a link in the description, but they're helping me out trying to get this thing going because I think these live Q&A broadcasts are going to be, or podcasts, whatever you want to call it, but a live broadcast with video and audio, I think is going to be incredibly huge in the future. So much because of Joe Rogan. I mean, but not everyone in the studio or the ability to sit down with somebody for hours on end. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that tech side, I mean, right now I'm having my brother-in-law actually help me out with all this stuff here. So kind of explains the level that I'm at.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's the audio. That's good. Perfect.
That's better. It seems like it kind of goes on and off.
It's right back where it was. I'm not sure why. But it's
if
right
I step
back where
away
we are.
from the camera a little bit, is that better?
Yeah, you should be good.
Okay.
Production issues, man. So I think I told.
I'm making you look bad.
No, not at all, dude. This is completely fine. Okay, so here's my big thing, right? You look at Joe Rogan, and I want to fill a gap that he is leaving. I mean, call it ambitious, whatever. But there's a gap that he's leaving in the technical side of things that I want to fill. I'm not going to talk to all the people that he does, but he's leaving YouTube. So hey, why not me? Maybe it's foolish, but whatever. If you look at his first podcast, it is horrendous. Like it is so bad. I would show it right now, but I'm not going to. The content was probably fine, but he had. Maybe I should just bring it up while you're telling that story. But what he had was like these little snowflakes coming on, and this was like maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago. No, the whole time.
The whole thing. Oh wow.
There's like this snowflake filter. Imagine like a really bad
It's like
Snapchat filter.
Stuff.
Yeah, I think it was probably like 2005, 2006, something like that. Maybe even 2010. I don't actually know the date. Maybe somebody else does. But he was already famous. It's not like he wasn't already famous doing this either. So it's like the what I take from that is not like, oh, why would Joe Rogan even do that? It was more like he's like, I don't even care. I'm just going to get this going, and hopefully it's great. But I just want to talk for a living because that's what he is. He's a stand-up comedian. He's a broadcaster. You know what I mean? Like he just talks for a living. So he does this podcast thing, and the very first one is just absolutely trash. And I think about that with my first class. My first class, it was okay, but definitely not where it is today, or at least that's how I feel about it. Some people might feel differently, but I think I'm a lot more polished now than I was when I first started, and that's the point, right? Like Joe Rogan stuck with it. He has like 1,500 podcasts at this point. He's got the studio. He's making a ton of money. Like he's doing really, really well with his podcast, but where he started was how everyone else does, and you never know how it's going to go. So in this case, like,
too.
oh yeah, absolutely, that's a really good example.
Wow.
Yeah, he's got a crappy little video camera, and he's sitting at a desk just talking to a camera, and it's like, I think everyone starts in that place, and that's a good example of what's happening now. You know, we've got this podcast, and you know what, we had problems, no big deal. We'll just keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not an NBC. If I was NBC, I'd have somebody over there and filming the whole thing. You wouldn't need your brother there. You know what I mean? So
yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so tell me more about the business side of things.
Yeah, so the business side, as far as doing all that, I was always entrepreneurial. So the tech side just kind of came in just because it wanted to do it. I was always able to find a way around it. You kind of know where when we run into issues, especially entrepreneurial types, we can always figure it out, even if it's not the best fix. We just get something going. And I always just found a way to, again, make it work. If you looked at my first websites, even that 40K website, a lot of people asked me to share that source code. I still do have that code, actually, like the original, like, because I built out like 15 different versions of that. But if I showed you that code, you would cringe in seeing how I built that, because that was my entrepreneurial side saying I need to get this product out, and I didn't focus on the best practices, and I just slapped things together. And I think for almost a year, I actually had debug mode in Django set to true the whole time, even when it was live. So customers would be able to see the bugs that would occur in the website. It was ridiculous. But yeah, like that's me being non-techie and coding. I just do it to get things done, and I do go back and try to clean up my code and learn from it. But I really just go forward and try to figure it out as I go.
Pretty cool. I mean, that's actually part of how I got better at Django as well. So I learned it on my own, and then I had a family friend that needed a web application built for basically database management, and I actually hired a freelancer to help me with it. Right, so I knew there were some things that I just didn't know, but it was really trial by fire in the sense that I wanted this thing to be successful so I could do more of those things. So yeah, it was not perfect. Same thing. I mean, I didn't have unit tests. I think a lot of people don't have unit tests for a long time. They just test it manually, which is fine. But yeah, I think the key that you learned is like, you just get it out there and get it going, because that momentum is really what we're after, right? It's just momentum to keep going.
Momentum in the product. Yep. Trying to build.
So this actually makes me think of a question I really did want to ask you. Is when is it persistent? When does persistence become delusion? And while you think about that, I'll tell you a story as to how it applies to me. So in high school, this was what 2004, 2003 or so. Dating myself definitely, but in high school, I was convinced that I was going to go to the NBA. Right, I played basketball all the time. Two of my teammates actually did make it to the NBA. So I was like elite team, really really good. I was like absolutely convinced. We had college scouts coming there all the time, and I actually ended up getting injured, and I nursed that injury. I came kind of sort of tried to come back, and then I actually ended up going to college. And at college, same thing. I still had it in my mind. I'm going to do this entrepreneurial thing. I'm like as my main thing, but on the side, I'm still going to work really hard at basketball. Like I practice harder than anyone, in my opinion. I thought I was going to be able to do it, right? And I'm like fully serious on this. I'm not like exaggerating at all. I was like convinced I'm going to be in the NBA.
Just telling everybody, and you're actually working.
I don't think I told anybody. I mean, I've probably told friends a little bit, and definitely
well,
my like
people that. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah. People say it all the time. But
that's kind of a hard one.
Little bit of delay. So I'm just going to keep going on that story a little bit, and then hopefully the delay will catch up. But so when I was doing this, I worked really, really hard. So after practices, so obviously I'd go to all these practices, and then after that, I would stay for hours to practice more. I also played with my friends outside of that. It's not like I only did basketball, but I was really convinced that I was going to do it. But the one of the things that I have not mentioned is that I am 5'9" on a good day, right? So there's not very many NBA players that are under 6 feet tall. And so I was super persistent on it. I really, really worked hard to get to the point where I thought that I would be able to make it. Luckily for me, I got injured. Now, I do really wonder what would have happened if I did not get injured. Like, what would have happened to my career, my life? So if I didn't get injured, then I wouldn't have had the wherewithal to really evaluate, is this something I want? Because I got injured in high school right before my senior year. And then I got injured again in college, and then again in college. And that really like put it in perspective to me. Is like, do I really want to just keep ruining my body for this sport? The answer ended up being no. But I got that early on so that the delusion didn't really fully set in, right? So I had other people I played basketball with who, with that delusion, well into their late 20s, and maybe even still today. I don't actually know. I've lost contact with some of them, but they still believe that they are going to play in the NBA, and they're pushing 30. I think LeBron James already had a few championships by the time he was 30. He's like, what, 34, 35 now? 6 championships. And he started at 18. I don't know. It's like, when does persistence become delusion? And I think this is really applicable for software developers, right? I'm a huge, huge believer in the fact that software developers, like everyone should learn how to code. I totally think that. But should everyone be a software developer? That is not a professional software developer. That I don't think is true. So bringing back that question, when do you think that persistence becomes delusion?
Yeah, how's the audio? You can hear me pretty good, no delay.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay,
we're
cool.
Good.
Yeah, so that one's like I was saying earlier. That's kind of a hard one. That's really tough, and I think the biggest thing is self awareness, and that's, you can't really teach that. I mean, it's something about that you have to just kind of go through. You experience it, you learn about yourself. But since I can't really answer that question as outside of just like testing things and really paying attention to it and trying to have applicable steps that you can follow. Something that you go through as a developer where you do face that part where you feel like it's delusion is in the process of actually launching something. So for example, I still to this day, like when I launched my website, my course guide, I could have used something like Udemy, built out one, or just used their platform, paid them their cut and went with it. Through that process, I actually got to a point where I almost felt like I was like chasing a phantom myself. I'm building this out. Is this delusion? Do I really have what it takes, or any project that I've really done? And all I would do is just reevaluate myself and be very careful at analyzing the steps that I took to see if there was progress, because you can go a month and feel like you haven't done anything. When you're building something out, you don't really see any progress. But if you look at the close steps, you'll actually notice you're moving. So if you're paying attention to the actual progress being made and being honest with yourself, that's where personally I can motivate myself and convince myself that it's not delusion. But outside of that, yeah, I mean, can I build Google tomorrow? That's, you have to be real with yourself and be able to analyze that. But that's a hard one. I don't know. What would you say? I want to turn that back to you if you have an answer for that. You kind of explained your story, but what helps you realize that?
So I'm a pretty avid reader, and in college I was reading Mark Cuban's blog. It's called Blog Maverick. I think it's still there. He also turned it into an ebook, so it's definitely worth a read. But one of the best advices that I think he gave was follow your effort. And so for me, I stopped playing basketball. I kind of left basketball pretty much altogether because I keep getting injured playing it. But one of the paths that I thought about was potentially being a coach and going that way, because there's no harm in that, and there's a lot of career opportunity in the coach realm of things. But I was really driven to business. So my effort in college really shifted, and a big part of that was the people I was around in college. I went to a school that had a business program. I was in that business program and had an entrepreneur program, had amazing speakers come and talk, like the founder of Kinko's, which is now FedEx Office, but he came. I had a seminar with him, amazing guy. And so I was getting inspired left and right to start some sort of business, right? I really wanted to control my destiny. So I think part of the basketball thing was like, if you play professional basketball, you are literally being paid to have a good time, right? Granted, the practicing might be hard, it might be challenging, all that stuff. But anyways, in college, I got derailed a little bit and went towards business a lot more. So going away from basketball, I did have an opportunity to work with the university's basketball team that I was there, and that potentially could have brought me on that trajectory. But luckily, I did have the sense that, you know what, I'm actually right now I'm a lot more interested in this business side of things. So I'm gonna just dedicate to that and schooling and just getting more skills, basically. So to me, it's a really, really hard thing to know when you're moving in the area of delusion, right? So like I mentioned earlier, I want to fill a gap that the Joe Rogan podcast is giving, right? That's probably delusional given my current track record with podcasts, right? Like this is not the first one. I mean, this is number one, but this is the first sort of interview one. I've definitely done podcasts before, but I never really stuck with it to the point where it had momentum. And so perhaps it's delusional to say that, but I also believe that given enough time, effort, energy, and releases, eventually you'll build up enough momentum that maybe you'll start to be successful, right? Maybe you'll actually start to make something happen as long as you're learning through that. It's a really, really tricky thing, you know?
That's a really good response. I like what you said there. Any business that I've ever went into, I mean, you talked about tracking your efforts and maybe seeing where you can be more productive and using that. And if you're in any business that I went into, I've always kind of went into it that way too, where it's got to be a dual approach. If I'm doing these videos, okay, if this fails, even though I really want to, I know there's a small success rate. I know there's a really good chance I won't do something.
Yeah.
As long as it has like a dual approach. Okay, if I failed at that, at least I was a little bit better at coding, but I was always real with the possibility of that failure. If I ever started a business, which I've started multiple in my 26 years on this world, so not too much, but I always would go into it and get the legal paperwork ready to fail already. How is it dissolved? How are we going to dissolve this business? Where do the assets go? How are we going to pay off any debt? You just kind of go into it that way, and that's not a pessimistic way to do it because you're already prepping for that, but you'll know when things are getting to that point where you're able to cancel it and you won't be stuck with a bunch of debt or something like that. I think Richard Branson spent a year trying to negotiate the Virgin Airlines deal just so he wouldn't have to pay off all that debt if they failed, whatever that was. So that's kind of the approach that I took. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a very stoic thing to be like, oh, how is this going to end?
Well, Musk does that too. I mean, he talks about that. He says anytime you're starting, he saw Tesla at a 10% success rate.
I think, so Elon Musk, I think it was even lower than that. I think he said like a 1 or 0.5%, because it's just he takes on incredibly hard challenges, right?
So he kept that optimism, but he was still realistic about it. And I think he would be able to understand when it's delusion. I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
For sure. Yeah. I mean, and to me with software projects, if they're not something I teach, it's like I know whatever anything that I do for software, including one that maybe a few of you know of is Tide AI. That's a really dirty hat. Sorry to show it, but it's to me, it's like that doesn't have to be successful like at all because the software that I built for that is going to become classes one way or the other, right? So every piece of that will be a class that I'll end up teaching people to learn from the mistakes I've made in building anything. That's how I approach software projects for sure. I don't actually think about the end though that often. I do realize that the chance that it being successful is probably really low, but I don't like fantasize about the end or really think about it. Maybe it's something that I should do more of because then you kind of think you kind of let go of the results being personal, right? And make
Yeah.
it more of a science experiment.
It's more to protect others. I mean, I had business partners. We took
Sure.
on, $70,000 in loans at that time, with with one of our projects. So it's like, okay,
Whoa, we got to hear about this one.
oh man, it was so at one point I started a moving company. So we ended up going into buying trucks and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I did it all. I did everything from moving to accounting for family members and other businesses.
Wait, so moving. So okay, I get that there's like a lot of people that move all the time, and I see that there's a potential for a business there. But I got to hear like what is it that really put you over the edge? Was like, yes, we can do this better than all of these other moving companies that are out there.
So it was to raise money for a nonprofit. They had a bunch of young guys, so we had the strength. I knew how to build websites. I knew how to market. I knew SEO.
The nonprofit had the people that was going to help
Yeah,
you. Got
they
it.
had the laborers, and it was supposed to be like, okay, we're gonna partially do this for the nonprofit, and it's gonna raise money for it too.
Sure.
So business side and that. So yeah, if you have those skill sets, we're able to market it, and I think that venture lasted for about 9 months until I was like, okay, we did good, but I'm done. I don't want to do this. Like I saw other things that I wanted to try out, so just kind of burnt out. But yeah, just seeing the potential. Again, we're business minded, so we have to. You see something, you look at that. Look at my local area. I look at the companies that I can compete with, and I say I can do that better, or I can at least compete on their scale, and I go after it.
Sure.
So yeah,
And at the end of the day, what do you think? Do you think you competed better or?
Absolutely. I think what burnt us out was the business side and cash flow.
Got it.
We were it was more on that management side and hiring and dealing with the legal work that burnt me out. But as far as competitiveness, I think we did damage in our first year for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. A friend of mine in college, they took a bunch of college kids and started a moving company as well. But there was like, I think there was like 10 owners or something. It was just
Oh god, the bad start. Yeah, that's how everybody ambitious starts off when they have a bunch of friends. They want everybody to be equal partners. That not always the best solution.
Yeah. Do you work with your friends often now, or like have you started businesses with friends or family?
Family mostly.
Got it.
I have 7 brothers.
Okay.
So
We'll get into that in a second. But no friends at all, or?
I have before, not anymore. I try to keep that a little bit distant right there.
Sure. Is it because of burnt relationships, just not enough work, or?
I've kept all my relationships solid.
Yeah.
But it's added tension for sure.
Got it.
Yeah. I just don't feel like I can trust anybody outside of family. And if it's not family, then I really need to make sure that legal work is set in order and that, dissolving the company is ready. That's what I talk about.
Makes sense.
Protecting.
Yeah. So it's like the clear end is there. It's clear for everyone, not just you. That totally makes sense. I have had a partnership where the beginning and end were fairly clear, although the end was like, we didn't know if we wanted to go there, but it was fairly clear. So you have 7 brothers. Do you have any sisters or?
Yeah, 5, 13.
Wow.
Kids.
Whoa. Okay. So 13 kids.
Yep. It's a Russian family. We came here.
Oh, so you have 6 brothers then?
No.
Wait, am I doing the math
7
wrong?
brothers. So 8 boys, 5 girls.
Yeah, I did the math wrong.
Yeah.
Wow, 13 kids. Okay, so I have a little experience with this. My stepdad is one of 12, but I don't know what it's like. I have 2 brothers myself, and then a sister, and then my brother-in-laws, same thing. 2 brother-in-laws and a sister-in-law, and then they have wives. So I guess 3 sister-in-laws. Anyways, tell me about this. Tell me about this. How is it? What's it like growing up with 12 other kids in the house, and where do you fit in there? Are you the oldest or the youngest? The middle?
Number 9. So I was the second born in the U.S. So we immigrated here in '91. So I was born in '93, and
Directly
number 9
immigrated from Russia.
Yeah, from Russia. Yeah,
Got it.
yeah. So it's a big football family, American football.
Really?
With you guys outside of the U.S. Yeah, we all played, or most of us did, at least 5 of us on one team at one point, and yeah, just a lot of entrepreneurial spirit.
Five brothers on one team.
Yeah, give me a second. I got to show you something.
Oh my goodness, that is crazy. I played with my older brother a couple times. You probably can't hear me, but I played basketball with my brother a couple times, or baseball. What am I saying? Not basketball, but he was so much older than me, or 2.5 years. Wow, that is crazy.
That's 5 of them. We all played on the same team at one point.
What's the age difference?
So I think right now the oldest in that group is 34, I think. And then I'm at 26 right now, so it's about a 10-year span there.
So all 5 of you though played on the same team. How's that like even allowed?
Yeah, so we played in high school, 3 of us together, between one being a senior, freshman. I was the youngest one, and then we all joined like a semi-pro league. So it's one of those leagues that you can join for people that either didn't make it to college or are out of college. So we played with college level players too. So
whoa,
yeah, a lot of people just wanted to continue, just do it for fun.
Yeah.
Good times.
Got it.
Yeah.
So not quite a amateur league that you play as an adult, but a little bit above that. Is that kind of what it is?
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah.
Crazy. So did you want to play pro football then? Or?
Yeah, I did early on, but I'm 5'8", and in high school I was a little bit bigger, but at 185 that wasn't going to cut it.
Dude, we're like the same. I'm 5'9" on a good day. That's what I say. Like I was measured it at 5'9" in high school, but I'm really probably just 5'8". But like 185, I was around the same size in high school as well, and it's just that's funny.
And then I started losing weight, so my wife, I went down to like 150, and my wife's like, "You're getting too skinny. I don't like that."
Yeah.
So yeah.
Do you have kids?
No kids.
No kids yet. How long have you been married?
5 years, actually. 2 days ago, I think our anniversary was the 17th.
Wow! Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's an early age to get married. We'll get back into that, but I will say, once you do have kids, you probably will put on some weight. It's called a dad bod.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
Anyways, so 21, you got married, right? You said 21?
Yeah, 21.
So like that's really early for this generation. What is it about getting married? Were you with your wife a long time prior to that? How'd that come about?
I've known her since I was 12.
Whoa.
Always kind of liked her. She didn't know I existed. We started hanging out as friends, just with our group. So we always had family friends hanging out together. And I just kind of liked her for a long time. And then one day got to know her much better and kind of pulled the trigger. I didn't think I'd get married till I was 30. Like I always told everybody that.
Yeah.
I put out I don't know if it was a tweet or whatever I did, but I put something out publicly just joking about that, saying wasn't going to do it. But yeah, it just kind of happens.
Totally.
And it's been amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Being that you come from having so many siblings, are you going to have kids or?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so one day. It's not really in our plans, but I don't think I can go without it.
Interesting.
Have to continue something on,
Yeah. I mean, it could go either way. It's coming from such a big family. So are any of your brothers in tech? Or your sisters? Is any of your siblings in tech?
I'm always trying to teach the little ones. So we have like nephews and nieces. I have little sisters.
Yeah.
I try to get all of the little sisters in it. Only one is kind of taken to it, but I really want to get them into it. One of them's just learning some front end stuff. I got my wife into it, but no, outside of me doing what I do, I have brothers in IT that do they build out server rooms and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
One brother very successful actually in the IT department, but he just has contracts doing that physical part.
Got it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you like family, friends, or just friends? Do you get this a lot where they come up to you and ask you to build an app for them?
Yeah, apps, fix their oven, that kind of thing.
Fix their oven.
Everybody's got an app idea. Yeah, that's
Yeah, which is like, to me, it's like that's really cool and good that they do, but also like I teach people how to do it. So take my classes. Like, why are you asking me to make it
yeah.
for you? Just take my classes. You could do it yourself. Uh, anyways, so I guess like we you started teaching Django. Why did you do that? Like, why was it? What was the real thing that pushed you over to be like, okay, now I'm gonna fully commit to teaching a lot more? Like, what was it?
So why Django or why teaching?
Perhaps both, actually. That's a good clarification. Yeah, both things. Like, first why Django, and then why committing to the teaching of it as well.
So Django because of Python.
Sure.
So I originally I got really into stocks and just wanted to understand that, and I thought, okay, if I can learn this, I would want to do it algorithmically. So
Yeah.
that's something that I don't talk about publicly. I have like one video on it, but um, yeah, I just really wanted to do that, and I started by importing stock data into like Excel sheets. Started with Visual Basic actually, or VBA, so Visual Basic for applications,
Sure.
and then Visual Basics, if you look at their syntax, is just not fun to work with.
No.
So I thought, okay, if I can get Python to work with Excel sheets, that would really improve it. So I started working on Python, and as I started doing that, I kind of got all the basic syntax complete, and I worked at that company that I talk about for that website sale. So I worked at a company, and they had this laboratory management system. So once I learned Python and I found out about Django, I think through Sendex actually, Harrison, right? That's his name.
Yeah, Harrison.
So I found out about Django through him, and then I found your channel right after, just because you taught Django better. He taught Python very well, but I like the way you taught Django.
Thank you.
So really, because of you, actually, it was you and Brad. I think that like you were the first one, and then I picked up a few of Brad's videos. But just because Python syntax is so clean, it's so beginner friendly, and it just the framework itself, honestly, like everyone or a lot of people say that it's hard to get started, like it has a barrier to entry. I don't see it that way. To me, it just kind of clicked. I don't know.
Yeah. I honestly think the barrier to entry is I want to do way more than I can right now. Right. So I have this problem too. I'm like, okay, I know a little bit about functions and variables. Now I want my video membership application done. Like, there's
Yeah,
this
yeah,
long,
exactly.
there's this like a good trajectory of getting there. But I think that happens to a lot of people where they're like, I'm seeing some progress. I'm super stoked. Now I can do anything. And then they
Yep.
quickly realize, whoop, nope, that's not true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was to build out that application for that company, which I ended up selling to them 2 years later. But yeah, just to complete that task, something that I wanted to do.
So did that I mean, that seemed to hook you, especially selling it. It's like, wow, there's like a lot of value in doing this and keep going, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So then,
Yeah.
moving, go ahead.
The funny thing is, yeah, in building that, I knew nothing about what I was doing, so I way overpromised. Still met the deadlines, but I had this vision. I drew everything up in Photoshop and Paint or whatever it was, put out these mock-ups, and just gave myself a deadline. And then I usually met them, but it required insane work. But I definitely overextended myself in promising that. Yeah.
When you say mock-ups, did you spend hours on hours in Photoshop building what it's going to look like? Is that what you're talking about?
Not too long, honestly.
Okay.
Like just because of that because of the business side that I understand, I know that stuff's important, but you just got to get that idea out. Once you let somebody visualize what it's going to be like, they can usually picture it themselves. So I didn't do too much, but
Got it. Yeah. I've had a few people come to me with like this really detailed explanation of how they want their app to look, and then they ask for my advice on how to do that. Usually I'm like, take a step back, draw it with a marker on a piece of paper, make it really thick lines, and just very, very basic, and start there. It's cool to hear that that's pretty much what your intuition was, probably because you realize the time it takes to just, I mean, the business side, right? You're thinking business and software, not so much just like the engineers or the creative person who's like, I want this, this, and this, and this, and this type of thing, right?
well, you don't know what the product's going to be. I mean, it evolves so many times, even after my mock-ups. Like it changes all the time. When people talk about planning for a big project, there's no real way you can do that. You just got to start, build out an MVP, get something functional. And then in my case, I just rebuilt my code every time. I just built it again and faster and would have to readjust it, because if you build out your database one way, one little feature is just going to throw you off. It's going to require a whole new change. So yeah, that's why I didn't plan too much for it.
MVP being
minimal viable product. So
Sure.
just getting out a basic prototype.
So speaking of MVPs, have you read the Lean Startup? Is that something that is in your?
No.
Okay. So
I'm not sure what that is.
Interesting. Well, so you mentioned MVP, minimum viable product, not most valuable player, but MVP.
Did I say it wrong?
No, you said it correctly.
Okay.
You absolutely did, but I think MVP typically goes to most valuable player. Like that's how most of us think about it.
Yeah.
And I believe the Lean Startup by Eric Ries, like maybe 8 years ago, definitely worth a read for anyone who wants to get into software and also starting a business, but definitely software and trying to make a successful software project. The Lean Startup, I believe Eric Ries is the reason that so many people in the tech space call MVP at all. So talk about the minimum viable product. I believe he's the one who introduced that term. It's a fantastic book. I highly recommend that you read it, because it also talks about, obviously getting an MVP. So the very minimal application out there that has some of the features that you're trying to sell, and then iterating on it and getting customer feedback, like actually working with your customers. In your case, for the one you sold, your customer was your boss, basically, right?
So yeah, it was my boss technically, but we were displaying it to clients. So we got client feedback. So my company's customers were the ones using it. So they're the end users.
Sure. So actually, come to think of it, that's the way I believe the Lean Startup talks about it. It's actually not your customer, but your end user, and talking with them, trying to make it better, and then improving it, watching what they do versus what they say they do. And like, do you use tools like that right now where it actually monitors their clicks and like the heat map of their clicks?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which one do you use?
I stalk my customers. So I use outside of just Google Analytics, I try to get the basics. Hotjar, that's one that I put on the websites, and it gives you. Can you hear me? It seems like it cut out for a second. Okay, yeah. So
I'm trying to mute my mic in between us talking. So.
Oh, I see. Okay. So Hotjar basically gives you the heat map. It tells you where they click, and it gives you a lot of information on users. That's probably the main one that I used, and I referenced it in a few videos too. But yeah, just seeing how they're using it, it's big. You're right. They'll say they use it one way, but how they actually interact with it will tell you so much more, and you're able to anticipate their moves before they actually do something because of it.
Cool. Yeah, this looks pretty interesting. Hotjar, if you're listening, please reach out. I would love to do some sort of affiliate or advertising thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, actually, that'd be a product I'd stand behind for sure.
That's cool.
Something that I've used.
Yeah, I mean, I should probably spend more time with these things as well. I think I have this weird. Sorry, I'm in this weird place where it's like, do you spend a lot of time on the business side of things, or do you spend a lot of time on the technical side of things? Do you spend the time actually building out your applications and teaching courses? In our case, that's like the technical side. Or do you spend your time making partnerships, getting advertisers, doing podcasts? Like, how do you think of that yourself? Like,
that's tough. I struggle there because I get very focused on anything I do. Like if I'm focused, I won't reply to text or emails for a week if I need to get something done. So I kind of need to balance it. And I see what it's kind of like building a plane while you're flying. I just see what needs to make it work and I adjust. Like I get comments all the time on my own GitHub repos, old videos that I've done and fixing things. And I if I see that there's enough demand for it, I'll respond. If it's a business thing, like I haven't talked to any sponsors yet. I haven't set anything up. I'm just adjusting right now. Like we had a good conversation and a couple days ago when I posted that tweet about, just you and I interacting, like you gave me a good insight because I was focused on growing the YouTube channel. And then I kind of thought about it. I'm like, okay, 83,000 subs. That's enough to make a business out of it. Like I've made money off of it, but I could totally do so much more and not focus on growing it, but maybe getting those sponsorships or putting out courses directly to students, maybe doing some one-on-one coaching, which right now I'm not a big fan of, but I've considered that. So yeah, just kind of seeing where the demand is, where just paying attention to the business, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's definitely tricky given our mindset, right? We've got the on the business. So another really good book is called The E-Myth Revisited. It's a little bit older of a book, but the principles still stand today, in the sense that when you're on the business, that's when you're doing the sales, that's when you're doing the marketing, that's when you're making those partnerships. You're doing things to build the business up. It's kind of like what CEOs do pretty much mostly, right? They're not in there executing. They're sitting in meetings making decisions that are going to impact the major business itself. In the business is being the technician or even the accountant, where you're in there executing, or you're making sure the business is healthy with finances and stuff like that. So that's definitely a book that's also worth checking out, to get you in the mindset of maybe 2 days a week, 3 days a week, I should be on the business and trying to think of different ways to connect with my customers or my audience and help them achieve more. Because the other thing is, something that we mentioned is, if you have the right audience, it could be really, really small and you can be doing incredibly well, you know? I think that's true for a lot of developers too. If they are trying to land a job, in their minds, the right audience is a handful of companies, right? Like they just need to convince a handful of companies to buy their services. That's kind of how I think about it, and that might end up being very, very profitable. Something I wanted to show you, and I actually got this from a new friend of mine, and that's Code Mentor. So there's not an advertisement or anything like that. But something that really stuck out, and I'm thinking about this myself, is actually jumping on here, being a mentor, and helping people solve problems, because they actually pay for it, right? So if you're struggling and you don't really want to continue struggling, you can jump on Code Mentor, hire a developer to look at your code, I think even real time, to help you solve a bug or just nudge you in the right direction. And the reason I think this is really cool for you and I is, if you are doing it, let's say a couple times a week, you might start seeing a common pattern with certain bugs that are happening. And then boom, that's a new YouTube video that helps everyone that won't do Code Mentor. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I actually use them all the time.
Oh, you do? Oh, to solve your own problems.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. We don't know everything. A lot of times people assume if you're putting together a video, you kind of have it all together. That's absolutely, couldn't be further from the truth, at least in my case. I'm only 3 years at this. So all the time I'll do that. And if it's not like a Django thing, I'll have someone build out something in Node.js. Like they'll build me a prototype, and then I'll just reverse engineer it and make it happen in Django. Like I have to, because you can't always find, I guess, the best mentor that uses your tech stack. So I'm fluent enough with all of those that I can still make it work, whether that's PHP or, whatever I'm dealing with. But yeah, I probably go to them almost once every other
Wow,
week.
that's amazing. So I honestly, I love the challenge of trying to solve whatever it is, right? So I will spend weeks on end trying to figure out what's going on with that. And I realize not everyone's that way. I mean, you just said it, you're not that way. But I think the key thing from a business perspective for being on it, and if you're really trying to get better, do you really want to spend months at a time trying to solve a challenge that would take an expert an hour or less?
Yeah, exactly.
So like, if you could approximate it, how much do you think you've spent on Code Mentor, like financially?
Oh gosh, it's got to be at least over $5,000.
Wow. Okay.
I think at this point, that's over time. I mean, and you're right. Like I actually do enjoy figuring something out. Like I'll totally spend that time if I have that chance. There's times where I'll just run into a bug, or like something will happen in production. Like it's happened to that website that I built for that company. And I don't have that luxury of spending a week on this. And I have customers calling me right now because of this bug, and I need to get it solved. So absolutely, I'm going to these guys. I got to just make it work.
Dude, that is like, it's opened my eyes, because I believe Code Mentors hit me up before in the past, and I was always just like, like I've been very much like on all sorts of things for a while, except for teaching. Yeah. But the idea that it just cuts through the fat. It's kind of like, oh, you could post it on Stack Overflow for sure, and maybe you get an answer, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Code Mentor seems like you definitely get an answer. You said the stack might be wrong, so that's interesting. I haven't really thought about that, and maybe that's why people like us, or anyone who's listening that's really good at Django that could actually provide advice. That might be a really good place for it. Man, I feel like this is a raving review, and I haven't even used it.
Yeah.
Do you I guess, like, do you actually talk to the person, or do you just write?
Yeah. So you get a full on Zoom meeting. So what you do is you put out your request, and then somebody will reply to it. What I usually do is I get a free session. So like I'll just tell them, hey, let's get on. Let me elaborate on my problem. Maybe show you some code. So right away you go into the Zoom call. You can screen share, and they'll just go into it once they can. You just hit pay per session, and you pay in 15-minute increments.
Yep.
So they'll just have their budget, and you just go ahead and live one-on-one sharing screens.
So do the developers themselves, do they set what rate they want to charge and stuff like that?
Yeah, so they'll tell you ahead. So when they reach out to you, they usually have it on their account. Like I charge $20 per 15 minutes or whatever that is. And I know some of those prices could be higher for people just starting out, but I've done it to where I'll just connect with them directly, and I'll be like, hey, let's figure out a fixed rate for this, because this is going to be like an all day thing. And can I just have you for the day for $200 or whatever that is?
Sure.
And usually they're up for it.
That's amazing. I definitely,
There's really good people on it. I mean, these are talented people.
I 100% am going to try it out, and hopefully I can get somebody from Code Mentor to jump on here as well. I would love to chat with somebody on there to hear more about it. But I've always recommended to people to hire a freelancer on Upwork. But being alerted to this and the fact that you use it, I'm like, maybe that's not the best way, because the freelancer, they're just trying to turn clients, where a mentor, a teacher is going to take their time to hopefully help what you're trying to solve, and not just be like, yeah, it's fine, you're good, keep going, let's go to the next project type of thing, right?
Yeah. And the thing about these guys is they're reputable as far as like the companies they work at. Like some of these guys work at Fortune 500 companies that you'll recognize. I mean, it's guys just trying to make an extra buck on the side, and
Wow.
they have some good platforms. So they're not just freelancers. Yeah, they're not just trying to quickly turn this, I guess. And I think a big one for me is how you ask the questions, because you could get those type of people that will just say they can do it, give you an answer that really isn't the best one, and move on, try to just earn a quick buck from that. But if you learn how to elaborate, how to vet them, because vetting I've done it with employees before. In this case, it's just freelancers. If you learn how to vet them and set them up for success, then it'll work correctly. But you can definitely spend some money and get nothing out of it if you don't do it correctly.
So how do you do it correctly then?
I mean, there's ways you ask the question. So first of all, when you're asking a question, I've made the mistake of just putting out like a general request and then getting them on and paying them, right? And then it turns out that they really didn't understand my problem. And then we spend time on that call. The clock is running trying to debug this thing. So what I do is I make sure that I tell them all the things that I've done to try to fix this, where this bug is happening, to have all the code prepped before that call. So once they're on it, I can quickly put everything out, give them all the pieces that aren't working. And then if I find that they don't understand one of those pieces, I can quickly understand that they're not maybe the best fit to help me. But if you just go out generically, just think, hey, somebody's going to help me with this because they're an expert, there's a good chance they're not going to understand it. So prepping your code correctly, I guess, too.
Yeah.
Because they may understand it, but you may not present it to them in the right way. So I probably spent a couple $100 before I really learned that method and became effective.
Interesting. I would really encourage you to make a full-on video how to use Code Mentor well. That would be amazing.
Yeah, that's actually a good one. I didn't think about
that. Yeah. It's like, it's really opened my eyes. So in the sense that cutting through the noise, right? That's what we do as teachers, I think, right? We try to help them solve these problems step by step. But no matter what, as soon as you venture away from the tutorial, you're going to run into your own issues that aren't in the tutorial. The teacher's not emailing you back. Sorry, guys, I don't have unlimited time. Whatever it might be, Code Mentor seems like it cuts through the fat. I have to try this. This is really cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I should mentor on there. I'll have to see what you guys think in the comments. If both Dennis and I should be mentors now on there. What do you guys think? Yeah, cool. So I guess this actually leads to how do you get out of tutorial purgatory? I mean, if you're not familiar with what tutorial purgatory is, it's like you just do tutorial after tutorial after tutorial, and you never actually build anything. You never actually get a job. You just keep learning. It's similar to like the never ending student that just gets a master's degree, then a PhD, then another PhD, then another master's degree, and then so on. It's similar to that, but tutorials, I think it's more common with tutorials than continuously getting more and more degrees in universities. So, what is your advice to actually get out of tutorial purgatory?
I say build your own project. I mean, that's the way I did it. After I think I probably followed like 3, 4 tutorials, a couple from your channel, Bucky Roberts from the New Boston. I built out a few, and then what I would do is I would customize those. But once I kind of got to that point, you're gonna learn probably like 30% maybe from those tutorials. I mean, they're not gonna be able to cover those things that you're gonna run into, the real world problems that you're gonna have. So in my case, I had a project. Now that's tough because I know not everyone's going to have, the situation that I did. I was able to hustle my boss into a deal here, but I don't know. I feel like you just have to try to think of something. Like it could be stupid. It doesn't have to be something that you actually make money off of, but uh, getting something that you have to build on your own and don't have a structure or a framework for, that would probably be my answer right there. It's got to be just dig into it.
Sure.
It's like bouncing up against, bouncing off walls the whole time, and you're gonna remove those gutters, and then you're gonna fall off that ledge when you try to build up that piece that just doesn't, you don't have that tutorial for, and you're gonna have to do your research, and that's where you really learn too. You know that yourself. It's when you're trying to build out a feature, there's nothing on it, and you're just doing that research on Google. You're trying to understand every component of it, how it's put together, and then you start kind of putting this.
So this is a question I get a lot too. Is do you need to learn JavaScript to launch a Django project? What do you think?
If you're just trying to get a Django project up, no. But if you're going to be a Django developer and you want to actually be a full stack developer, absolutely yes. That's my answer. I don't know how you can go around it. Everyone tries to get away with it, but JavaScript is just the front end language. It's got to be. It doesn't have to be a framework. It doesn't have to be a React or Vue or anything like that. But it's really what makes a website better. It's what makes it functional on the front end. Like you can build out. I mean, I don't know. What would you say? I'm assuming you'd probably say the same answer. Like you really can't go without it.
Well, if it delays your project and there's no real added value to delaying the project, then I would say wait until people start to complain. So
Good answer.
a good example of this is, well, you have to know generally what JavaScript is so you can actually do embeds, right? So on codingforentrepreneurs.com, I have all these videos playing, right? And I've had that for a long time. But initially, I used YouTube videos. I actually embedded YouTube videos on there. You need to know how that works, which doesn't require JavaScript at all. But then I moved into what is now my host is Wistia. So they host all of my videos, but they also have a JavaScript layer that adds to that. So when I first put it on there, I did no analytics, and this was for like 2 weeks, maybe less than that. And I had my customers and non-customers, anyone on the site basically, saying, hey, I'm watching this video. I would love to know the progress that I've had in any given video so I can pick up where I left off. Very simple solution. That's when I needed JavaScript. Now, I already knew JavaScript, but that's a good example as to when you would actually start to do the JavaScript side of things specifically for Django. At least that's what I think. But I think you're right on the money where it's like, hey, you need to know at least some JavaScript. It doesn't have to be a library like React or Angular or Vue, but some vanilla JavaScript so you can at least manipulate a few things. Maybe do an asynchronous JavaScript request, one of those things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just trying to become more of a backend developer where you're trying to build out APIs or work with a database, I mean, you can probably get away with it. But yeah, if you're completing full applications, I think there's going to be a point where it's going to be the solution.
Yeah. And honestly, it's like then the next question is like, when should you learn SQL or when should you learn DevOps or system engineering? Like, honestly, it's like what interests you. It's a combination to me. It's like what interests you and where you put your effort and what you're thinking about all the time, right? Like I've definitely thought about DevOps a good amount, but I think about AI like exponentially more than I think about DevOps. DevOps is incredibly important, but the AI thing I think is going to have a much bigger impact on us for going forward. But
Yeah.
I think that's true with any skill. But the problem is what I just mentioned. This actually gets you into that tutorial purgatory because you're like, oh, I'm really interested in this now, and I'm gonna dabble in this for several years before I actually do anything with it, and then I'm gonna dabble in this for a few years. You know what I mean? Like it's tricky because not everyone's gonna build a project. So do you think maybe like just going and trying to get a job where you're working in it every day and there's like demands from a boss that's like requiring you to deliver things on a schedule versus sitting around watching tutorials all the time?
You're talking about getting out of tutorial hell, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Going back to that one, yeah, yeah, I would absolutely go that way too. If you can't build out that project, if you don't feel confident enough, which I totally get it, like that's hard to do. It's not, I'm very self driven. I can do that, but there's a lot of people that need somebody, kind of guiding them through that. In my case, I would say go get that job. If you can't get that job, go offer someone to serve coffee and then teach you on the side and work for free. I mean, that's honestly how I would do it. I would go get a night job. Like I've worked night shift before.
Yeah.
That's my thing is just get my foot in the door with something and try to work under somebody that knows it better than me because that's real world experience.
Sure.
But I always tell people that they don't like to hear it, but I say, if you can't get a job, go offer to work for free. Like you have to do that. Like that's not ideal. I get it, but
yeah, and that for
an amazing opportunity.
that for free part doesn't have to be that long because your skills.
No, it can be a couple of months.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is working full time in something you're interested in, regardless of what you're interested in, is going to make you better at that thing, even if your boss isn't very good at it, right? It's just the fact that you're in it every day, all day, every day. I totally made the mistake. So in college and shortly after, I'm like, I'm going to start a business, right? I'm absolutely going to start a business and I'm going to work in a restaurant until I do, right? That literally never happened. I mean, a successful business, one that paid my bills and all those things, not just a project that made a little bit of money, but really didn't sustain my life. That actually never happened. It wasn't until I worked full time in marketing and software development that I actually had the mental capacity to spend a weekend to actually make things happen. So I do think that if you can get a job doing at least remotely the skills you want to work on, that's the job you should go get, not the job that's easy to get necessarily, I mean, we all have bills we got to pay. So you got to make sure that those things happen, of course. But as soon as you can get into doing your job or the skill that you're working on, the better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Like right now, I also have an interest in mechanical engineering, and there's a part of me that's like, can I get a job that I'm working part time? Like when I say part time, I mean like 5 or 10 hours a week max, where I'm like welding things, using CNC machines, like doing all this stuff to just get really comfortable with it. There's a part of me that feels like that would be a good idea. There's the other part that is probably not going to do that, but I do think that being in the skill is incredibly important while you're building it.
Yeah.
So
it's funny that you mentioned going in and maybe picking up that job, not saying that you're going to do that, but I'm the same way. Like I tell my wife sometimes, I'm like, I would consider, like, I still keep my resume out there. I still do take interviews. Like I took a lot probably around February just to see what's out there, but I've never had that mentorship from somebody more experienced than me. I've always been like the top of the food chain here, I guess. If that, I've hired people, I've had developers working for me, but my knowledge is capped. Like I don't really know how a corporate structure works. I don't understand how they do things. Like I can only do my research. I've read books. I try to reverse engineer what I see. But I've thought the same thing. Like maybe I can still do what I do, but just pick up that job and work for a year or two just to get that experience. I've actually really considered that. That's cool that you mentioned that.
yeah.
And if I was going into a different field, like you said too, same thing, I would probably consider going and get that job.
Are you familiar with? Oh shoot, I'm going blank on his name right now. CD Baby, Derek Sivers. Derek Sivers. Are you familiar with him?
I don't think, no, it doesn't sound familiar.
Okay, so before iTunes had everybody, before Spotify for sure, there was the only way you could sell your independent music, right? So you're an independent musician, you have a band, few friends, you want to sell it online. The only real easy way to do that was through a website called cdbaby, cdbaby.com. I think they still exist. But the way that iTunes got all of its music for when it was rolled out was because of CD Baby, not because of the record studios. The record studios had, tens of thousands, but CD Baby had hundreds of thousands of these independent artists, and iTunes ended up landing this deal with CD Baby. Anyways, the reason I'm bringing that up is it sets it up for Derek Sivers. Fascinating guy. I highly recommend that you read his book, watch some of his talks. He's been on Tim Ferriss's podcast a number of times. Really, really cool guy. He taught himself how to code because he found it interesting. So that's another part that I think you and I can really relate with, is he's a coding entrepreneur himself. But he talks about how we've got so much time. 10 years is a really, really long time. It doesn't feel like it once you finish it, but you can quite literally have a 10-year career in something and have another 10-year career in something and another, right? It would be, to me, it'd be crazy to think that we're going to do the same thing for 30, 40, 50 years, right? Like my grandparents did, or my great-grandparents especially. Same thing for pretty much their whole life, right? But 10 years is actually a really, really long time to not only achieve amazing results or some results, but also to get to sort of an expert's level, even if you're not completely the top of the line expert. But I mean, I see this with you. In a few short years, you're now a prominent YouTube figure for Django and many other things, of course. But that happened in 3 years. Imagine what's going to happen in 7. So a whole decade worth. Like, I am excited for you in that sense. But what I'm trying to get at here is we don't stick with one thing. We should actually jump around, but commit to it for a good amount of time to actually get better. So I guess
I totally agree, man. That's
yeah.
cool. I thought about it that way too. Like, life goes on forever, and I'll get bored doing the same thing. Like, there's no way I'm just going to keep doing this. I'll have to do something different too.
To interject, life does not go on forever. It happens like this.
Yeah, you know.
There's the other part, right? So I see this with kids. So I have 2 kids and a wife. My kids are just growing like crazy, and it's insane. But also at the same time, I was 26 yesterday. I'm not anymore. I'm 33 now. But that has gone by so fast. And I started coding for entrepreneurs when I was 26, or so, maybe 25. But like the last 7-8 years went by really, really fast. And so you'll also see this, but realizing that actually doing this transition to other kinds of areas that you're really interested in, we only have one life. And if you aren't interested in what you're doing today, if you're not interested anymore, stop doing it and move to the next thing. Because I think as humans, we are incredibly adaptable, and you'll be able to make those jumps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, anyways, rant
Called
over.
me out on that life being long comment. Yeah,
No.
I guess I know what you mean by that. I say that because I'm 26 and I've done so many things by now, and they seem like lifetimes. Like it was a lifetime ago. Like I started one business.
Sure.
I had a web development company, and then I had the moving thing, and then there was other ventures in between, and like each one took about, and it wasn't 10 years. It was about a year or 2 in between, but that was enough time to gain experience, to do something with it, and then move on to the next thing. When I was 19, like that felt like what I'm doing right now is what I'm gonna have to do forever to master it.
Sure.
And then that's gonna be it. Like I've already went through that process of transition.
Yep.
To where it's totally like.
Well, I think that we have the life being forever, or feeling that way. It totally feels that way, I think, right? Because it feels like the party's never going to end, but it does, right? So thinking of the end game, this is the Stoic thinking, going back to that of like, what is it going to happen when you die, and how do you live the best life that you have when you're alive, And to me, it's like not doing something that we hate. That is like the last thing that you should be worried about. You know what I mean? So I totally empathize with you. I'm not trying to call you out on saying that life's forever. It definitely feels that way at times. But I tell you, in 8 or 9 years from now, if you do end up having children, especially, but even 8 or 9 years from now, maybe you'll look back on this and go, wow, that was 8 or 9 years ago. I can't believe that. You know what I mean? So.
Yep. Yeah, and that was a big one too. You're saying the whole doing stuff that you hate. Gary Vaynerchuk preaches that, and that's kind of something that got me too. Like when I was, about a year ago in starting this venture too, I was I was doing a lot, but I was miserable. Like it sucked really bad. I mean, it was so much pressure. I had anxiety for probably 2 years straight just doing that, like sleepless nights. And I was just thinking to myself, there's no way. Like I would rather go broke. Like I was making good money doing all that, but I just didn't want to continue that. And I actually thought about that and didn't like the life, I guess. I had to change something. That was a big one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good on you for doing the change. Not everyone commits to it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Oh,
Speaking of,
it's scary. You get used to it.
yeah,
You
yeah.
definitely get used to it.
I mean,
Yeah.
we all have ups and downs, right? Like, and I think that's something else that's hard to realize with some of the people we admire. I mean, like Elon Musk, I think is a good example of somebody who is a little bit more publicly showing his ups and downs because he puts it out there.
Mhm.
But if you only watch the highlight reels, all you're going to see is all the good stuff, and then maybe it feels negative on your own side. But what I want to ask you is, if you had to stop right now everything related to Django, to teaching, to software, what is it that you would transition into? Like what would get you up in the morning that it would be really excited that that's not what you're doing right now?
So no more coding.
Well, I mean, you could code for sure, right? But I mean, like, you're not doing all of your courses and YouTube and
Oh,
Django
okay.
stuff. Like, all of that goes away, um, and now you're on doing something different.
Well, if I still had some code related to it and I wasn't teaching and doing all that, I think I'll go into robotics. That really interests me. But if I had like no code, I'd probably go more into the accounting field and maybe legal field too. Like that's something that I really got used to in running the business. That
Interesting.
really got me. Like I love Excel sheets. Like I can stare at those all day and crunch numbers and figure stuff out. Like I kind of have that data science side of me that I think weirdly I would love to be an accountant, and I love legal stuff just because of doing taxes and understanding that and kind of fighting back and forth, and getting things approved and doing stuff that, yeah, so stuff I guess related to business. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Nice.
going on to the robotics thing first, have you seen the MIT course? I think it's called Under Actuated Robotics. I can't remember the name of the teacher, but he was on Lex Friedman's podcast a few weeks back.
I haven't seen a course, but I do want they do have a YouTube channel, something like Boston Dynamics. Is that them, right?
I
Is
think he
that
may
something
have.
totally
I
different?
think I think he's consulted with Boston Dynamics, but
Gotcha.
it's and MIT probably works with them a lot 'cause Boston, um, or they're both in Massachusetts. I'm not sure. Actually, MIT's in Boston, right? I think
Yeah,
so.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so his course is really interesting. I would check it out. I think it's still going right now.
What
But
is
one of
it?
the
What's the name of it?
it's called Under Actuated Robotics. And the thing that I also find robotics incredibly fascinating. We'll talk about your accounting and legal stuff in a second, but
Oh boy.
the that he shows a robot, and I wish I try to find the clip because I thought maybe we would talk about robotics, but he shows a robot that is moving pretty naturally down a ramp without motors. So it's just moving with gravity, and it looks like a human moving down. Kind of, it's like it's the
Hmm.
lower half. Um, but anyway, so he goes into how all of these things work, and I would agree with him in his sentiment that we are at the early of what robots are going to look like. I mean, I was talking about the Tesla self-driving earlier. It's a really good example of that. Is that we are so early in robotics. So where if you were going to be doing robotics, what would you be working on? Like, what's the first kind of robot that you'd want to build?
I think it'd be in something about self driving, but it'd be with drones probably. Like I've always loved the idea of being able to like have like multiple drones flying up, you know, have them like go over like a certain radius and actually follow a path and maybe scope out by heat sensors, doing something like that over like a forest or for hunting purposes. I don't know, just the idea of teaching this thing or having it teach itself to move, the
Yeah,
idea of self-driving or self-navigating, I guess.
sure.
That was, I joked about the shop, having my own shop to work for or work within. That's kind of it right there. It's building things like that that can just move, but have their own brain, I guess, in that
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you happen to have like a Roomba right now?
A Roomba, what's that?
Oh, it's the robotic um, vacuum that just moves around the room and vacuums
Oh
for you?
no.
Oh, okay. So
I do
something
have
that
like
I
a Jimmer robot up here. It's nothing
you,
related.
what is it?
I built it with my little sister. It's just one of these things. It's like an Apple product, but this is like me just trying to get her into it. That's as far as I went.
Oh, how cool is that? What is it called?
Yeah, it's a Jimu, I think.
Jimu. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a
Um,
$200 product that you kind of have to put together. But yeah, that's I'm probably not the best person to talk about it. Like to me, robotics is where programming was 3 years and maybe 4 years ago, where I would watch tutorials and I wouldn't even know what I'm watching, but that code just looks so cool. It's just really entertaining to me and
yeah.
intriguing, but I don't know
Yeah.
much about it just yet. I
It,
know I'll
it
get there.
it really combines the mechanical with the software in a way that's like
Yeah.
super fascinating. Um, yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
So accounting, what like what have you built anything with software to help your accounting, even if it's in Excel right now?
No, I've thought about that and I've actually considered creating something like that as far as like an invoicing software that can be almost like a version of QuickBooks. But I just haven't gotten to that. When I was doing it, it was all Excel, QuickBooks, and just dealing with that. But no, haven't really attached programming to it just yet.
Yeah, something I hope to do at some point, and maybe a great thing for us to collaborate on as far as teaching, is actually making something like that, but that also pulls in like credit card transactions and all that. Similar to QuickBooks, QuickBooks has that capability, but to do it
Mm,
in a REST API and a Django project, essentially making a Django-based accounting system for open source. Not necessarily a class, maybe a class, maybe not. But the options for doing accounting, aside from Excel and Google spreadsheets or Google Sheets, is minimal. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But that's interesting that you would actually go that route. I'm not. I can't say I'm surprised because it definitely aligns with a lot of software things. But I didn't think that's
Yeah.
where you would.
Yeah. I mean, I used to sit outside of restaurants and gas stations as a kid and like count the customers that would go in and figure out like what they were buying. And I would love to just calculate that, figure out how much they make. So to me, I would just love to, I would love to understand exactly what a business is doing, what it costs them to make this stuff and see profit margins. So yeah, I mean, I've done stuff in Excel that's kind of helped project that, but I think you can do a lot with it if you were to actually, you can actually build a piece of software around that that can really help you, um, I guess, display those projections a lot better, give you that, what the runway is going to be, what the investment will last, that kind of stuff. I think you can definitely do something there.
Yeah, then you mix in some machine learning and
Yeah.
you get another
Yeah,
level of
exactly.
predictive. Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
so law, this is interesting too. Why law? What is it about the law that you enjoy?
So it'd be from a business perspective again. Just setting up businesses. When I set my stuff up, it was always me putting it together. So I learned that process, but I think I really got interested when I started dealing with the IRS. Like there was times when I would have to go back and forth with some tax stuff. And one thing that bothered me dealing with the IRS now, completely different topic, but they would often throw on like a fee on you or just tell you, yeah, you're gonna have to pay this, and they wouldn't explain why, right? And then there was a time where I think I fought like a $10,000 bill, something that I was supposed to pay. And this is me dealing with an IRS agent, and I was able to to fend them off, and it worked. And I thought, okay, well, these people aren't as smart as they are, or as smart as they seem, or they're just being shady. So having that defense against that was a big deal to me, and it was really appealing just because I didn't like the way they behaved in that sense, and to be able to protect my business, make sure that it's all set up, and I'm not having anybody attack me in certain ways. That was really cool. So I enjoyed it when it lasted. I think I did that for almost 2 years. But yeah, I think that's kind of the background of legal stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting. My mom and stepdad are both attorneys, and since I was young, my mom wants me to be an attorney. But
Yeah.
I find this the law part tedious, and it's also left to so much interpretation, which some people might
Yeah.
enjoy. But I like the hard sciences where it's like it either works or it doesn't. The law is like kind of somewhere in
Yeah.
between that, you know. At least that's how I feel about
Well, there's a lot of work for no progress too. That's kind of the issue. That's the one really unappealing side to it. Like when we're building stuff, you get to see what you're doing. You see progress every
it. Oh
day.
yeah,
But with this, you can fight something for 6 months and nothing comes out of it.
yeah,
You know,
it's crazy.
that's the part that's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally, man.
Mhm. But I did have business partner, not business partners, but people in business that would come to me like just from like me. I mean, I wasn't their legal representative, but they would like show me these cases, and I was able to help them out, and that was kind of nice too. Just seeing like small business owners just get ripped apart, and they didn't realize that they were able to, you know, they had certain rights, or I can protect them at least in some way. Like that was kind of a big one too. Is I guess is standing up for the smaller guy. That was a big
Sure.
one.
I wonder what impact AI will have on all of this in the future. Like for AI, for interpreting things, for giving like legalese being like as plain language as possible, also going up against the IRS and saying whether or not they should be able to do these things. And vice versa, the IRS going up against small businesses too, which I would imagine is something that they are looking into. I will mention to everybody else, we'll probably take some questions soon to just the live audience. Really enjoying having Dennis here. This has been a lot of fun. I, uh, I I don't know about podcasts in general, if podcasts are the future, but I am interested on your take with podcasts. Do you listen to them? If you do, how often are you doing it? And which ones would you recommend?
All the time. So I do a lot of Joe Rogan, but I think bigger or more often it's definitely audiobooks. I think they're kind of related to podcasts in a sense, but I sit all day. So I'm at my computer or standing at my flex desk here. So I love to take walks, and when I'm doing that, I think a lot. Like I'm able to just I don't know I can elaborate on certain things. So I love to throw in an audiobook or listen to a podcast, and I think that just listening to good dialect is really eye-opening, and you can pick up a lot even if it's not directly said in there. It just gets your brain moving in a certain way. So from what I'm seeing, I don't really know any trends to it other than the fact that a lot of people are doing it. I don't see it going away anytime soon. Like I think people are reading less, it seems like, just because of the way we read headlines, the way we move around, to where we're just much more interested in continuing on with our day. And we're usually driving, walking. Like my wife and I will go on long road trips, and that's what we'll do. We'll listen to an audiobook. Like that's fun for us.
For
That's
sure.
just getting
Yeah,
coffee and
yeah.
moving. Like I think that's a big thing. So I think there's a definitely a big future in it too. I don't think it's going away anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think we're actually doing more of both things, of listening and reading, because we have our phones everywhere, right? And also,
Yeah.
how often are you reading something while you're also watching something? You know what I mean? Like, I do it a
Yeah.
lot, and I catch myself. I'm like, why do I even have the TV on? You know?
Yeah.
What do you think about Joe Rogan leaving YouTube?
I mean, I don't really have an opinion on that other than, I still get his clips. I love watching like those sound bites,
Sure.
those 10-minute
Yeah,
clips,
yeah.
Yeah. I don't use I've only started using Spotify recently. So that's kind of like that transition. So I guess I'm still up to date on it.
Right.
Don't really know too much of that backstory.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do like Spotify. I think it's a great app, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I've heard that they're probably going to get into video as well. I mean, it makes sense for Joe Rogan's, but I've heard that they're going to be doing other kinds of video, not just like podcasts, but like actual production things, going up against Netflix and all the others.
You think it'd be a competitor to YouTube by any chance? Or
Yeah, that's a good question.
like,
I don't know. I think a lot of these bigger platforms are avoiding the user generated content for a long time, because others have tried and failed miserably when they add user generated content to, let's call it premium content. So with Spotify, it's probably not that hard to get your music on there, but you still have to go through some sort of channel to do it. You can't just give them an RSS feed like you can with podcasts, and it just works, right? But of course they do have podcasts now too. So I don't know the process of getting a podcast on there yet. As of now, this is only going to live on YouTube. I'll probably put it somewhere else in the future. But to me, podcasting is an experiment that I want to see if it's worth continue to do. I think it
yeah,
might be, because like it's going to give me this opportunity. Like you and I haven't spent this much time talking before. Yeah, we've chatted a lot, and I think we've gone a lot of back and forth. But I think what's cool about this is it's like, hey, you're not next door to me, so we're not in my studio, but it kind of feels like we're just hanging out in my studio and having a conversation. I think that's going to happen a lot more of. We're going to see a lot more podcasts, but I just don't know exactly when there's going to be a tip, right? So like YouTube, there's still so many new channels being made every day. You got to figure a lot of them are going to also make podcasts if they don't already. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
It seems like tech podcasts are just getting started too, though. Like I've started seeing a lot pop up, and I think that's due to just making the industry more transparent. I think it's really cool, like for somebody that doesn't, that's just getting started. Watching a few tutorials doesn't really tell you much about the tech field, right?
Yeah.
Now you're getting people with job experience, people that actually have dealt with issues, just discussing it, not teaching it in a not a fabricated video, but in an organized video. You're just kind of getting that insight that you normally wouldn't get. Like you said, you're just a open dialogue as if we're hanging out, and I think it teaches.
And also the lack of polish, right? Well, clearly with this podcast, the lack of polish, but I mean, this is like I don't have all these video or like these like graphics and all the stuff that a lot of podcasters do. That's what I meant by that, not anything else. But the thing that I like about it is that the polish happens with courses, right? So I do this myself. I'll do a couple takes, to make my video, whatever the video is. If I'm recording it, I'll do a couple takes and maybe that'll be really good. But unfortunately, that adds a layer of disingenuousness to it, right? Whereas this live chat podcast doesn't. Like, there's no way for you to say, Justin, can you stop right now? I'm going to edit this out and let's pick back up. I could do that, but that's not the mission here. The mission is to do these live broadcast Q&A to see exactly how we are and how we would actually have this conversation. And that's like my goal. That's why I think you being on Riverside with me and hopefully not watching the live chat thread too.
No, that'll throw me
off. I mean, it's thrown me off a little bit, but two, I look at it just to make sure there's no like drop in audio quality or video or whatever, just to make sure that we're on point there. But what I'm really excited about having is talking to you again in the future and looking back at both of our progress with the things that we're working on, And I would love it if somebody's out there that's like, oh, I would absolutely want to make the clips of this podcast for you, because I definitely want to do that. I want to make those same sort of clips of you talking. The other cool part about this Riverside that I'm using is I'm actually going to get your audio or video and audio feed as an individual feed. So the clips themselves could just be you talking, not both of us on this kind of weird broadcast as it is right now. So that's something else that I think is going to be pretty cool to see the progress of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually surprisingly, I've actually picked up with it pretty well. I don't know. I guess I'm not seeing that user feedback, but this is definitely cool.
Yeah. I think so the other part is I did have some questions I wanted to talk to you about, but like I really wanted this to be, I'm getting to know you. I'm doing this for selfish reasons in many ways, right? Like I want to know these things myself. I'm not just trying to be like, oh, let me get that person on because they're crushing it right now, and I want to get some of that. You know what I mean? It's like you've been hitting me up for a while, and if I can help you in some way, that's great. But really, I'm just trying to figure out what is it that you're doing well, and the things that you're working on that I can learn from. I actually want to hear your feedback on that specifically, what you think you're doing well, and then we'll start maybe taking some questions from the audience. But I think that having a real conversation is what's key for me. And that's what I really like about the Joe Rogan podcast is I can just throw that on and listen to these guys having conversations. Joe Rogan's like a master at doing these conversations, of course, right? Like he's the best of the best. That's why he's able to talk for 3+ hours, and sometimes it just flies by. I feel like our conversation's been doing that as well. I hope other people feel that way, but for me, it's been that way. So that's good. I mean, we've had some hiccups. I don't. Hopefully, you feel that way. Um, I did see Lex Friedman on another podcast recently where he pulled out his phone and he said, I'm going to monitor the time because if I look down in like an hour and it felt like 10 minutes, then I know this is a good podcast. If I look down and it looks like it's only been 10 minutes and it feels like it's been an hour, then I know it's a bad podcast. So hopefully for you, for me, it feels like it hasn't been that long. So
No, I've definitely enjoyed
good,
it. Yeah.
good.
Kind of feels natural, actually.
Yes, hopefully it's something you do more of. I think a lot of people want to hear your opinions, the way you see the world, and all that. But so that brings me into that question of like, what do you think that you do well right now as it pertains to like your Django courses, your website, all of those things? What do you think that why are people coming to you? Why are people watching?
So that threw me off early on. I mean, a lot of it was calculated. I mentioned earlier, I watch user behavior
Yeah,
like a hawk. That's the business side. I always say that I pay attention to how people behave, what they're doing, and I would watch these channels. So I'm a consumer of it. I would watch what you do, and I see how people react to it. I can see the comments. I'd always go through those and just see general behavior. So I would always just try to produce the content that they want. But I think something that is appealing as far as like why users might prefer my content in certain areas is because that I don't look like a tech guy. Like if you see me explain certain things, I have a very amateur way to
dude,
do it.
you don't you
And I
don't you
also
don't seem like a tech guy either. Sorry to interrupt. Like,
yeah.
I think we share that in common. Like, you don't seem like you've been like locked in a room somewhere for a decade, and now you're starting to talk about it. Didn't mean
Yeah,
to
yeah.
ruin your flow, but keep going.
No worries. So yeah, on that topic, I think me explaining things, I assumed that everyone was kind of like me in getting into it. So I would always try to just adapt to the user, and I would pay attention to all the roadblocks that they went into, and any tutorial that was similar to what I was trying to do, I would watch it and see where I felt like they had a hiccup and would adjust to it. And I also, as far as the courses, I think that set me up pretty big too. I knew in the start when I put out a few videos, I had a few like small projects. Uh, I got some traction, but I was still small. But when I put out that course, people started following it. So they would really get to know who I am after watching a series of videos. Like when I watched one of your courses, I felt like I knew you just from your voice. Like it was just something that was like, it's weird. Like you get attached to it. So I'm just like, it's like soothing. You're just hearing it. This is like 30 episodes into it. And I just keep hearing your voice. So
Soothing,
once
huh?
I made
Soothing. I
that
got a soothing voice. Ooh,
soothing, I guess.
nice.
Yeah. I mean, so you get people really used to you, and then once I got that, I knew that I had to have a couple of heavy hitters. So once I completed that course, which took me some time because I had some traveling in between, I knew that if I can put out a video that got like real momentum, I can get people subbing to my channel because they see that I have other content. And I knew that if I had a big video and I had no other content on my channel, they would just, people don't just subscribe. They subscribe because they see that you have other stuff. So I didn't want to put out anything big until I had like a good base set up on my channel. So it's kind of like a storefront that looked good. Then that video where I sold that website, I knew that was going to be big. I didn't know it would go that big. It's almost at 1 million views right now.
Crazy.
That just blew my mind. I thought maybe I would have like 30,000 views, and that was a lot for me. So I knew that, okay, that's a good topic. I came out very genuine when I was telling that story. So when people saw it, they saw that it was Django related, and they saw that I had Django content. So I don't know. It's kind of like just understanding that behavior, giving them a platform to enjoy, and then bringing in videos. So that's why I do those talking head videos. I talk about my schedule or how long it took me. Like I know that stuff does well, but if I didn't have that base of courses, uh, it wouldn't really have traction to it because then I'm just a talking head guy. I don't know if you know that term.
Yeah,
We've used it. You just talking by
yeah.
yourself. Yeah. So um, that's kind of the strategy that I would employ. But it's really just understanding users, I guess. Like I just pay attention to that like crazy. Like that's a big one for me. I mean, I don't know if like as far as like it's funny because you're asking me that, and here you are, like you've done this for so long, you're much more successful than I am, so I should be asking you that. But yeah, like that's a strategy. I'm sure it's full, it's all familiar to you. Um,
Well, one of the things.
the downside is, well, I'll say that the downside is when you get questions for like certain topics that aren't that that popular, you're going to put out a video that you're going to spend a lot of effort on. You're going to do research, but if I know that it's not going to get that many views, I'll still try to do it because I do want to be helpful. But I have to consider my own progress here, and I can't allocate a couple of days to something that I know won't really benefit me in the long run. So I tend to stay away from those just because it doesn't really help me grow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that I think at any level we can learn from others that have been successful. Absolutely, I think you can learn from anybody because somebody knows. Everyone knows something that you don't, right? Like for sure, everyone's an expert at something that you are not in. I think that's really important to understand. But the other thing is, you grew your audience very, very quickly, and that's something I didn't do, at least on YouTube. Udemy was another story that blew up for me in a similar fashion that you've felt. So I guess like the converse of that, what is it that you think that you should work on? What are the things that you're like, I'm not too great on this aspect. I need to improve that.
I would say production frequency. I tend to not be able to do two things at once. Like when I'm working on a course, that's all I can do, kind of explain that, and I'm just stuck on that. If I can do a good job of doing these talking head videos, because I put a lot of time into them as far as like the thought process behind them. When I'm doing them, they're pretty natural. But yeah, I feel like if I produce those consistently, like I love your 30-day Python series. That's cool. Like you're constantly having something out there, and I think you're just keeping that interaction. For me, like I've had it to where like I won't post for a month and a half, and people are like, "Dude, I thought you were done," or "I thought you weren't on YouTube anymore." Like that's something that I need to work on, and I've thought about maybe hiring help, maybe hiring somebody to help me produce like the actual course, and I can clean it up a little bit and then just produce it, do something like that, so I can still get out the content, but not spend time, in the back end, still, building it and constructing everything. I'm still, like I said, 3 years into it, I still can feel very new to all of this. Like I can make stuff work, but there's times where like, I can show you that video, I can put it together, but you're not going to like the method. Like it's not like there's going to be a lot of things wrong with it, and I don't want to make that. So I'll have to spend time doing research on how to do it better. Like that's a big issue for me.
For sure. Totally understand. Well, thanks for sharing that. Appreciate it. I think others should get that as well. Okay, so what I want to do is start taking some questions. I think we'll get a question from someone from the audience, and then maybe jump back in and have some more conversation. If at any time you need to leave, just let me know. We can hop off whenever you want to leave. We've already had a great discussion, I think. And if we need to do a part 2 in the future, which I think we should, but I'm sure people will let us know about that as well. So let me just queue up some of these questions here. Man, I really think it's a good time to get into building software, even with AI level things coming. It's like there's so many really good resources, yourself included, to actually make software and make the whole process a lot easier, I think. Okay, so let me see here. All right, guys, so go ahead and start asking your questions in the live stream. I'm going to go ahead and put it up on the video, and you can ask it to either one of us, but ideally you're more pushing it towards Dennis himself, so he can answer some questions for us. So I got to come.
Man,
go ahead.
I just saw the live stream. I just turned it on. I did not realize my quality's that bad. Like I have a good camera, but it's like it's laggy, man. That's bad.
That's right. It might be the internet, but
yeah, it's probably my internet.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, like I said, if I end up finding somebody who's good at doing clips and stuff like that, I'll be sure to have high res clips. This is why I need a studio, and even more, I need like I mean, that's where support from our audiences, if you will. We can absolutely get towards having a studio where I have more people in here and we actually have live studio discussions. Joe Rogan flies in his guests. It's not an uncommon thing for him to just fly it in, which I think is really cool. So I'm hoping the final actual released version that comes on YouTube doesn't have as much buffering. And if it does, then I'll have to re-upload something. That way everyone can get it.
Maybe just put my face on my side.
Yeah, so Riverside, unfortunately, so Riverside is it's really good for the recording side of things, but not so much um, everything else per se. Oops, I got a little
Gotcha.
lag myself right now. Okay, so actually, I might have to do this the old school way and just find a question on here. Here we go. So John asks, what is the best platform to deploy a Django application?
I've only done Heroku and AWS, like Heroku for the hosting, but Postgres for the database, AWS static files, S3 buckets. Honestly, I'm probably not the best person to answer that. I think that's the only thing I've used at this point.
Yeah, no, I think those are great answers. Those are, and to me, best is very, very relative. Heroku is incredibly
Yeah.
easy to deploy, and it runs on AWS, so we know that it's going to run because of those services are amazing. But yeah, I agree with you. Those ones are really good.
It seems like the most common one, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, I think
From what I've seen online, I guess.
yeah,
That's,
really good ones out there that are worth discussing. But as far as like the easiest low hanging fruit, yeah, Heroku's right there. Maybe some other ones that I've heard about recently, like what is it, render.com, I think it is. Matt over at Just Django talks about it. I think that one might be worth checking out. DigitalOcean just released something that's very similar to Heroku. That might be worth checking out. What's another one? Linode. I started back with Linode. Geez, like a decade ago, I used Linode to use their virtual machines to deploy a Django project. But that gets into a lot more work. Anyways, next question. So, oh yeah, I should have asked you this a long time ago because I think your take on this is going to be really good. How do you become let's say, any freelancer? The question is from Himith related to a Django freelancer, but let's just say freelancer, especially from the business side of things, knowing what you know technically, how do you actually become a freelancer?
so becoming a freelancer, as far as getting things going, you're thinking about clientele, right? You're talking about getting customers. It's funny. I'm actually going to do a video on that topic, and it's going to be like my first 50 customers and like the methods that I use. And I think I came up with 8. One thing I'll say about being a freelancer is that you're a business owner. Like a lot of people kind of mix that up and they think that, okay, I'm going to be able to get these clients and I'm going to code all day and that's what I enjoy doing. Well, once you're a freelancer, you're going to be a business owner. So it's all about networking, relationships. That's key for all of this. For me personally, like I got started in just my first network. Like I just knew a lot of people with family. I just started telling everybody, letting everyone know. Once I kind of got that first customer base, I was able to mine clients very well. So it's really about keeping your clients happy, networking through those clients, because business owners know business owners, and you're just going to have to understand their needs and understand their markets very well, because freelancing, again, outside of the coding part, where whatever you're using, if that's WordPress, like I used WordPress when I was doing it.
Yeah.
I haven't freelanced in at least 3 years now. And I'll still do it every once in a while, but that was the big thing, was just networking, knowing how to pitch it and understanding the customers. Like something that's funny is people selling websites for like, $300 or whatever it was. Like a lot of people will say that. I'm sure you've seen it, and it's usually overseas. And they always ask how I can raise that price. Well, it's really in the quality of the customer. Like there's customers out there willing to pay more. They're out there, and most customers that you might charge so little to, they would probably pay more if you were able to deliver that product better, if you're able to explain the value of what you're doing. But if you're just selling them a website, they're not going to see any value than just that physical product. So it's all about that. Yeah, that communication and networking, I would say. I don't know if that's a good enough answer, but yeah, I kind of want to elaborate on that in that video and go through getting those clients. But
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Perhaps everyone should just watch that video. But I guess like one of the things is, how do you actually keep a client happy? Like, what do you think is a good strategy for that?
So you're gonna have to know their business, but it's communicating with them. Regular updates. Like clients hate it when you just kind of deliver that product and you take off. Like stay in tune. If you can be physically at their business, try to stop by. Like if I did coffee shops, like I would stop by and just hang out and talk to the business owner, send them emails, ask them how their business is doing, So they felt like I had that vested interest. And anytime, I mean, I think after my first 10 customers, the rest were all referrals. But yeah, keeping them happy is showing them that you care and understand them. Is stay in constant communication. Deliver, like if you don't feel like you're going to meet a deadline, don't have them come to you and then explain to them that you won't have that deadline. Like if you know you're going to have an issue, tell them way in advance, hey, we might run into this roadblock. Like they love having their hand held through that process. So if they feel like you have it taken care of, you're talking to them, I think you're golden. That's
Yeah.
you really set up.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Is a lot of freelancers kind of go dark and then come out
Yeah.
of nowhere in a few weeks. And honestly, even if you're behind, you tell them that stuff. And I mean that's what you're saying is just communicating really as well as you possibly can. Yeah. So next question. I guess this one's for me. A lot of coding camps are teaching JS. I'm going to reflect this to you as well. A lot of coding camps are teaching JavaScript, Electron, Express, Node, React, and so on. Should you stop learning Django and switch to JavaScript for better job prospects? What do you think?
So they're talking about Electron and they're asking if they should switch to Django
No.
for better job
Stop
prospects.
doing Django and switch to JavaScript for better job prospects, since the JavaScript stack is on a lot of these coding boot camps, and also a lot of jobs.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. Okay, yeah. I mean, if you're into Django, if that's your thing and you're strong with it, I say stick with it. But the reality is, I think there's going to be a lot more jobs in JavaScript just because it's more widely used. Like if you feel like you're good with both, but you're just getting started, I don't see any reason why you should make that switch. But don't go through that. You know, we talked about tutorial hell, but I call it, shiny ball syndrome, where you're just going after the next big thing. Like if you feel like your job prospects are there, go after it. But I don't think you should stop what you're doing and change things up. Like Django has a lot of job opportunities. They might not be as much as JavaScript, but it's still there. Like it's kind of up to you, but I don't think it's a horrible idea if you're cool with both.
Yeah. I really think just dedicating and getting good at one, like as good as you possibly can at one of those, whether it's JavaScript or Python, and again, following your effort. I mean, if you need to switch just to try something different, do it. It actually gives you a lot of appreciation for the thing that you might have come from. Or because for me, I tried everything and then I finally got Python, and then wow, Python really stuck. I tried Ruby on Rails. To this day, I'm just like not a huge fan, but other people are ginormous Ruby on Rails fans. So you got to find what works for you. I think that's what it ends up coming down to. Because if you're good at software, switching to another stack for a job is motivation enough potentially to learn and master that stack after you've already mastered one. That's how I feel about it, at least. Yeah. Python Anywhere, certainly another option that Ms. Farr responded to. So any other questions, guys, please keep going, because I'm definitely not going to be scrolling. So if you need to ask those questions now, do it in the live chat, because we're going to be on with Dennis just a little bit longer, not too much longer. What tools and techniques do you guys use for an effective system designs as a freelancer? Yeah. So do you mean to design the architecture of the entire application, or are you referring to like just the overall graphic design? Please clarify that one. This is fun. So what do you use to learn a LAMP stack? Or more specifically, somebody's asking, they have a LAMP stack with an Ubuntu server. Should you change? So should they change from a different stack to a new one? What do you think about?
I think this is like the JavaScript question right here. Like it's really up to you how comfortable you are with it, where the opportunity is. Like I feel like it's got to be pretty similar. I think you'd probably answer that the same too, right?
Absolutely. Although I'm not a huge fan of PHP, so using
that too.
using Python or JavaScript, I think is much more future proofing yourself. I actually don't know this answer. Maybe somebody can tell us. PHP, I believe, is only a web technology. I don't know if you can use PHP beyond that.
I think it's primarily for sure. There might be uses out, but that's kind of my issue with PHP too. Also, a reason why I'm not a big fan of Node.js, even though I think it's cool. But yeah, Python just seems more universal. Even though I tend to tell people to stay language agnostic, like I don't think you should, pick one over the other. I think you should just do what you enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So I think maybe for the next time we get on here, I'll have to get people asking questions from the get-go and maybe just remind them to do that, because these live, I sort of wanted it to be more of a live Q&A towards the end. And I do have some more questions to ask you, but the funny thing with these live chats is people start to have conversations with each other, which is great. But then it's like, I got to scroll through this, and I had a tool to make it easy, but we've had a number of comments that make that tool not easy anymore. So I'll have to figure that out. But okay, so
somebody asked, I actually pulled up the stream. Somebody asked, what is the best JS book that helped you, especially for a Django beginner? Well, that's just a general JavaScript question. I still recommend JavaScript jQuery by John Duckett. It does use outdated practices. The jQuery part, I still think you should understand it just because there's still stuff built in it. So you still need to know it, I think. But that book really did a good job of giving me the idea, even if it was written in 2015, I think. Like, it doesn't have ES6. But that's a big one that I still have. My wife's reading it right now, but I always recommend that one too. And I hope you don't mind that I read that question.
Oh,
I just
no, not at all. That's great. That's why we're here. Okay, so if you ask a question, just ask it once, please. I got this a couple times. So startup ideas. This is definitely relevant to you and I because we're entrepreneurs, business people. If you have a startup idea, should you actually learn how to do software development, how to write code, or should you partner with somebody who does?
I mean, if you're just learning code for the sake of starting it, just to do it, I would say you should try to think about finding a partner. Like, I just feel like learning how to do this, like you did it and I did it too, but I feel like we still had that interest. We had it for business, but we also kind of were into this. So if you can find a passion for this, I think you should do it. You should try to do it yourself, but looking for a partner is good. That also has its downsides. Like, it's really hard to find somebody that's willing to work, especially if you don't have the money, which a lot of people don't. It's hard to find somebody that's just going to be willing to put up their time for something that, let's just be honest, a good chance it's not going to work. Like, that's just the reality of it, not to be, doom and gloom here. So learning it yourself would help, but I think you should try to have some interest in it naturally first. Which I'm assuming if you're watching.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely the assumption. But you never know. I mean, and the other thing is with skills live on, projects don't always, right? So, barring a accident of some kind, I always look at it like, is this a great opportunity for me to learn that many more skills in whatever that area is? And if it is, then that might be a project that's worthwhile. But if you're starting a business to just make money, it's going to be a really, really hard and long road for you. Yeah. That's what I think. So the other part, if the core of the business is driven through some technology and you don't understand that technology, I wish you luck, because you're going to have another very, very hard road because you won't be able to foresee the coming changes that might be happening. That's something Mark Cuban's talked about a lot too. In one of these Shark Tank episodes, he said, "You don't understand the core of your technology. I'm out." And I was like, "Yeah,
yeah." So I just found a question. Just kind of scrolled up to the top, and I actually wanted to ask you this one.
This back and forth on us both going through the questions. I think this is a great idea. Keep going.
So this is from Abbas, I think. Abbas Kareem, and that is do you prefer a standalone React on the front end with Django on the back end, or a React app inside of Django? Now, for my answer, I've usually put React inside of Django, but I'm curious on how you do that. Do you just have like an API and then?
Yeah, so like we're not talking about server-side rendering. We're talking about actually having the code base inside of the Django project. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah.
it depends on how big of a project that you're working on. So my Coding for Entrepreneurs project, I have them separate. So the Coding for Entrepreneurs user interface, the front end of it, is in a completely separate project because there's a lot of code that goes into that one. And then the Django backend is also in a completely separate project, and I work on them separately. Sometimes I have to work on them hand in hand because of the API that they need to both interact with. But that's a good case of them being separate. But when I start projects on a small scale, when it is a small scale, I have them together inside of the same code base. And the servers themselves, I always use a production grade static file server for all of my JavaScript. And that's usually AWS as 3 buckets, and ideally a CDN on top of that with CloudFront. Every once in a while, I'll use Google Cloud Storage for the static files. But there are a number of other static file options out there that I think are worth checking out as well. But that's essentially how I go about doing that. Now, server-side rendering for React, I haven't done it with Django yet. It's usually, if I'm going to go that route and have server-side rendering, which essentially means that the React project renders on the server instead of in the client. This adds some capability for SEO. If that's the case, then I'm using Node.js and Express.js and stuff like that to actually render out the server-side rendering of things. Adding it to Django adds a layer of complexity that I don't think is necessary when you can just use some of the other JavaScript tools that are built in and really made for doing the server-side rendering for React. So hopefully that answers.
Really cool answer.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, really cool, because I usually just put it straight into Django. Probably not the best method. I've separated them before, but in a production environment, I've always just kind of kept them together just because of the way that I learned it. But that's cool. That actually gives me insight.
Yeah, I mean, the building, you definitely want to build, so the actual in product that you're building in a React project, this is true with Vue and Angular as well. So when you build the production build, that absolutely can and probably should go to the Django static files for Django to manage that. It doesn't have to, of course. But if you're big on Django, then you probably would go that method. And I definitely will release something related to this soon on my channel. So make sure you subscribe to get that. But the main thing is, gotta plug it, right? The main thing is that your production build, Django's working with your production build, and you're doing production builds for your React projects, for your JavaScript projects. So, yeah. Okay, next question. Let's see here. And tell me if you find one that's good. So what do you think about the future and present of Django ASGI? So really asynchronous Django. What do you think about those things?
Oh man, I'm not the person to ask that question, honestly. That's something that I haven't really looked into myself.
Sure.
So yeah, that's like when Django 3 came out and they talked about async being attached with it or coming in the package with it. Yeah, that's something that just kind of went over my head. I just saw that it wasn't something that affected my code right away and what I was doing, so I just kind of ignored that part. I haven't really gotten into it.
Yeah, I'll give my 2 cents on this. I definitely get this question on these live Q&As. So asynchronous code is amazing for a lot of good things, like a lot of reasons. Long polling tasks, if you need those to actually work within Python. But async adds a layer of complexity that a lot of people who write just standard synchronous Python, which is the vast majority of Python right now, are going to find asynchronous to be incredibly challenging to do well, because it's also hard to debug what is going on with it. And the other part is the ORM, so the Object Relation Manager inside of Django, is not currently asynchronous. And there's a really good talk that Andrew Goodwin gave earlier this year that is definitely worth watching. But the side of asynchronous that's really cool is that if you have these long polling tasks, but you don't want the user to be interrupted with what they're doing, you can use asynchronous views instead of bringing in something like Celery to offload things. I think we were getting a little bit of a buffer on Riverside, the actual production, the broadcast itself. So hopefully you're hearing that okay. But the idea though is asynchronous with Django is going to become a major role going forward, but it's not going to break the synchronous side of Django going forward. At least that's what their current plan is for the next 4 or 5 years, barring any major changes, of course. So that's my response to that. Thanks for the question. It's a pretty good one. It's definitely something worth thinking about a lot more of. But synchronous Django is going to be around for a long time. So I think the vast majority of you, especially those of you that are learning, should just spend time in synchronous Django. Coding Phase, thank you for the support and the super chat. And if you want your answers or if you want your questions answered faster, super chat is a really, really easy way to do that. Coding Phase, thank you for that you're looking forward to more of the podcast. I appreciate it. So let's find another question. What do you think, Dennis? Did you find a new one or should
I have one for you.
Yeah.
I have one for you that I think would be useful. So when I got started, I picked up Python and I just went into Django really quick. And I really never started using classes that much. So I always use function-based views. I noticed use class-based views and I see the difference in between them, but I always get asked this question and why I don't use class-based views. And that's kind of my answer. But what's your opinion on that? Because function-based views seem very logical to me. And I prefer to teach people that are just getting started the easier route and then moving up to that. What's your thought process on that? Because I've been asked that a bunch of times and I'm sure a lot of people in the chat will have the same question.
Yeah, sure. Sorry for everyone with the buffering. Not sure why it started buffering for both of us at this point. I have no idea. But anyways, let me answer your question. So function-based views are great because it's just a function. You write all the logic you need in that function, and that's it, right? It's like using Fast API. It's like using Flask. You can use those functions to render a view. Class-based views are great to shortcut or to stay dry because when you use a CRUD application, create, retrieve, update, delete, those are methods that happen all the time for any given model. Class-based views shortcut that because you can use the create view or the update view or the retrieve view. And those views, those classes, then all you really have to designate is the query set and maybe a form if it needs a form. And that's it. And then you just use that class. And now you can circumvent writing all of the logic that would go into the function-based view for that class, including the template, right? So the class-based view also looks for a specific template that's related to the model for that class. So it's definitely worth looking into more of to see the difference between the two. But function-based views are great for just getting going. I definitely use a mix all the time. In my recent Django bootcamp, I only used function-based views because logically wise, they're just so much easier to just get going. But you end up repeating yourself a lot. And that's where, as you advance as a Django developer, you'll start to not use function-based views nearly as much because class-based views can do everything a function-based view can do, but they do it in a way that can be incredibly clean and simple. So hopefully that answers your question, Dennis.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I wanted everyone else to hear that. I totally get what you're saying. It makes much more sense when you're advanced. It's much cleaner. But to start, yeah, function-based views, you're going to repeat some, but they're so clean. I love it. It makes sense. You see everything right there.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Miguel, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. Yeah. I got to give special thanks to all the people that do super chats. You know what I mean? I think the cool thing about doing these live broadcasts is the potential for us to connect with you guys more. Those super chats help the channel, but it's also like, hey, you want to see more podcasts? Let's do stuff like that. And you know, you can buy me a coffee. So thanks, guys.
Yeah.
We'll have to buy Dennis some coffees too, huh? Or
there's
go ahead.
So there was just a question that I wanted to prioritize too, just because this is my brother-in-law. So I don't mind. I don't know if you'd mind me asking you. So
No, please.
This is what are your thoughts on school, going to computer science or going to school for computer science in this day and age? Is it worth it?
Yeah.
I have my thought process on this too. I would like to hear yours.
So earlier we talked about working in a job to build your skills. Now, if you can get a job that's going to build your skills, that would be the amazing first step. But what universities do is they tell everybody else, there's a signal to everybody else that I've spent the effort and time to make this thing happen, right? And that signal is something that can be incredibly valuable, right? So you spend all this time working in a university, working hard, getting your university degree, and hopefully getting a degree in the field that you're wanting to get into. But the signal doesn't show that you know how to build projects, right? So even if you're at a university and you're getting that degree, you should be working really hard on building all your own projects so that it justifies it on two ways. One is that you commit to things that you start. That's the university degree. And ideally, it's something that's hard to get into, which also, in some sense, proves that not only is it hard to get into, so you're willing to put in the work to do something hard, but you're also around somewhat of elite professors and stuff like that. But just going to a university, you can still slack off and get a degree and have really nothing to show for it, right? So whatever you end up doing, getting the best out of it is my recommendation. So going to the professors, picking their brain, making sure that they know who you are 10 years later, right? So I do know that there's professors that know who I am from university, right? So when I was there, they still know who I am. And to me, that's important because that means that I made an impact on them while I was there. So as far as job opportunities, as far as notoriety, those things are really a lot easier to accomplish at a university than not being at one. The other thing is opening doors. People, when you get an email from, let's say, for instance, MIT.edu, if I get an email from that, I'm most likely going to open it. If I get an email from Gmail, I'm not necessarily going to open it and read it. But if it's from MIT, there's already that notoriety that's like, oh, I might actually look at that. But even if it's not MIT, even if it's just .edu, I might actually end up looking at it. I'm not unique in this case, right? A lot of people are in that vein because it's saying, hey, this is somebody who's working hard to better their future. Now, I think the key of all of that, of anything that you end up doing, is working hard. Now, is it worth the investment? This is actually really, really hard to answer because it does cost so much to actually get into a university, right? Or to actually pay for a university. Sorry, I'm seeing all this lag and it's kind of throwing me off a little bit. Hopefully you guys aren't experiencing that, at least on the audio. But anyway, so it costs a lot to get into a university. And does that value actually translate to after the university? Well, I don't actually think it's on them. I think it's on you. They're going to charge you as much as they possibly can because they are a business too. Even if they're nonprofit, they're still a business. They still need to make money. They still need to pay for everything. So yeah, they're going to maximize that. Absolutely. So if you are unsure of it being something for you, there's nothing wrong with taking a year to figure out if that's the case, right? Because for me, I went to community college before I went to a university. Community college is a less expensive way to take a lot of college classes. But I maximized that. I don't know if professors at the community college remember me per se, because I was just trying to get straight A's and do some social activities to get into the university I really wanted to go to. But that's a great alternative to going directly to university. But if you're not going to college of any kind, if you're doing that, you need to have a very, very specific reason as to why you're not going there. If it's because of money, I don't think that's always the best reason, because you can absolutely get all of the grants that you might need. You can get scholarships, all of those things. If you apply for literally every grant and literally every scholarship, you might be paid to go to college. You might not get all those scholarships, but there are stories of people that circumvented the standard high cost of college to do that. So this is certainly a really long answer, and I can give a lot more to it. But the idea that going to do computer science, the thing that I really like about the hard sciences is there's value, there's actual hard evidence value of what you know and what you don't know, right? If I asked you some sort of computer science question that you should know from college, you should be able to answer that, right? Like same with math, right? If you don't know how to answer certain math problems or you don't know how to approach them, it's going to be very, very obvious to people who do very early on. So you don't necessarily need college for that, but actually being successful at a university in one of those hard sciences will absolutely show or prove that you either do know it or you don't. So to me, it's absolutely worthwhile of an investment right now. Unless, and also it's already been proven well over that the people that do graduate from college are paid 40 to 50 times or 40 to 50% more than people that don't on average, right? And that average also includes the ones that drop out and make billions of dollars. So take that into consideration as well, you know?
So really good answer. I think I would second that. I think I'm on the other side where I fully back up everything you say. I'm one of the people where I would be able to, I know that it opens up more opportunity, but I like to personally hunt down my own opportunities and kind of create my way to where for me, university didn't really make sense. I still, would benefit from it, but yeah, I definitely don't think it's a must either, but I love everything that you said. And I think you made a good point of saying that it's up to you regardless of what's going on. That's a really good answer.
Yeah, I actually thought graduating, so I went to the University of Southern California and their business program is ranked really high, and it has been for a while. And for many reasons, that should be the case. But I really honestly thought leaving there that the gates would just be there'd be like a floodgate of opportunity that would be coming to me. Like I wouldn't have to go and get it. Because in academia and also as a high school student, you hear these stories of that sort of thing happening. But that just wasn't the case for me, right? So you really do have to make your own way, regardless of what you end up doing. I've honestly thought about going back to university now. I'm 33. The reason being is the access to the professors that are there. These are people that have dedicated decades of their life to be elite in what it is that they're doing. So there is that other aspect that, Dennis, you and I, if we tried to get on a professor, like go into their, office hours or something like that, they'd be like, sorry, you're not a student. Please leave. I'm calling security. Get out of here. You know what I mean? Like we couldn't just do that. I mean, maybe there's a roundabout way doing it because now we have an online reputation and stuff like that. But even that doesn't guarantee that we'll do it. But if you're a student at that university or even another university, you might have an easier time getting in front of all kinds of professors that we just don't have the access to do. So that's another thing that should not be overlooked at all with that investment because they love helping out their own, right? It's like the academia world.
Yeah.
So I also taught at a university too, so that does maybe influence my response too. I got a full disclosure there. You know what I mean? Thanks for the question, Dennis. I do like that one. Khalid, you can absolutely ask a Joe Rogan unrelated question. Please do. Entrepreneurs can't do college. What do you think about that, Dennis? Do you think that college should be done for business? Should you go to business school? Should people do that?
I think there's a lot of value in business school. I think regardless what business school is going to teach you, still needs to be, you're still going to have to figure that stuff out. I definitely don't agree with the fact that entrepreneurs can't do college. I think you're going to have a great, you'll benefit greatly from it. But I think for entrepreneurs, it's almost less needed though, just because of the, half of it is intuition. I mean, they're going to teach you to be a bean counter. They're going to teach you all that stuff that you need. You seem like you have the background, so you're probably better to ask. But from my perspective, I had to pick up all that stuff that was taught from books or just from life experience. So I think it would make things easier if I did experience that. But it taught me to be more, just to rely on my own instincts to just kind of, I don't know the correct term for this, but just to use my intuition for things. Like that's something I feel like college can take away sometimes because you do get that answer from that professor. Like sometimes just figuring it out on your own is going to teach you. So I disagree with that statement, but I think it goes either way. I just think for business, it's a little bit less needed.
Yeah. Well, another thing about university is that you won't really get the rest of your life. After high school, you won't get the rest of your life is a peer group the same age, right? So same age, all doing similar things. And to this day, I know of classmates that are off doing amazing things. Not that I'm necessarily in touch with him, but like I had a class with the founder of Tinder. Like he sat 10 feet away from me. I chatted with him several times, and we sort of had a relationship back then, but I didn't keep it. And then he went off to create Tinder a few years after college, and one of the biggest dating apps ever, right? So you don't necessarily get that if you just leave high school. Sure, maybe people from your high school did that too, but universities often attract those kinds of people that are really after it. They're trying to make themselves better, but that's only a small percentage. Not everyone's like that, and you just don't get that exposure all the time outside of that. I mean, you definitely can get it by going and living in a different area and being active and networking and all those things. But universities are really interesting for that specifically. But I think to your point, like if you're going to spend $100,000 at a university, let's just say that that's what you're going to be spending, probably more, but let's just say 100,000. That if you put that towards a business, and then after you run that business runs its course, and then go to university, you're going to be so far ahead of everybody, because that $100,000 is going to be an amazing education that you'll get if you're actually trying to make that business successful. And it's not just going towards school, right? It's not going towards that. It's going towards potentially actually producing revenue of some kind. Ideally, that would be the case, right? So if a loan was going to come your way, whether it's from the bank or your parents or family friends, and you're going to take $100,000 to start a business, they're going to be bugging you all the time. When am I getting my money back? Right? Maybe it's not a loan, maybe it's an investment. So you can get a lot of education from that in a short amount of time. Let's say 4 years, you just build a business from a loan instead of going to school. You will absolutely learn a lot of really interesting things. And then your original idea of what you wanted to study in college, you might be like, oh, I'm going to study something different now because I did that in my business. So now I'm going to go ahead and study some of the hard sciences, or maybe some of the social sciences. Maybe you're like, oh, I want to be better at humanities because I want to understand people better, so I can do better in business because I already understand the accounting. I already understand the legal. Maybe that's something that you end up doing instead. But it's a long road. It's really hard to leave the comfort of the challenge that school provides. A lot of people don't necessarily fully appreciate this when they're in high school, right? So you got to think back to when you're 18. To me, when I was 17 years old, I was playing in the NBA, right? So that was something that definitely was not going to happen. There was a slim chance, but a really, really, really slim chance. So to think that you are going to start a business at 18 years old, you're going to be that 1.000000001% that makes that successful, and it's for the rest of your life. That is really, really hard to say. But going to a university, you can build your network, you can be exposed to new ideas. That is something that has been really good about those universities. And actually, this actually brings me into a question I'm going to point to you, Dennis. Is you said about working in an office. I saw you tweeted recently that you miss working in an office, and I think this goes with universities. You're around all these people. So, Dennis, why is it that you miss working in an office building, and how do you think that might relate to going to a university?
I mean, yeah, I think it's what you said about that networking. I mean, when I had the office, you're constantly going out to lunch with people, whether that's business partners that happen to be in there for a meeting. We would just take them out. But you have this energy. You're always around people. So even if you're doing what we're doing right now, you have meetings. They're usually, half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour maybe. You don't get that synergy that you normally get when you're just around them all day. You can hop over to a desk, chat with somebody. It just flows more naturally. It's something that can't be created working alone. Now, I like working alone because I'm used to it now. But yeah, there's that part of me that just misses that everyday interaction, and I've noticed myself move slower because of it. I feel like I physically move slower just because there's nothing moving me anymore. When I have the office, even though I get up at the same time, it's like you jump up with you spring out of bed, you got to get up, you have a meeting at a certain time, you just have your day on a different level, I guess. So yeah, that's a big one. Yeah,
and Grant, I think it's Grant Sorensen from 3 Blue 1 Brown. He was on Lex Friedman's podcast, so it's definitely worth a listen. I think his most recent one. He was talking about similar with the work environment, but in the early days of like IBM, a lot of the innovations came out. I think it was IBM. It might have been Intel, but a lot of the innovations that were happening were not in the boardroom. It was in the water cooler at the water cooler
Yep.
at the break room. Passing by. A lot of these like things started happening a lot just being in proximity with these brilliant people, and I think about that a lot. I actually haven't worked inside of an office in 8 years, like consistently. I mean, I've definitely worked at a WeWork and Starbucks and stuff like that. But actually in an office with other people actively getting it, I haven't done it in a while. But Grant's comment really made me think about this a lot because thinking back to university and being around that environment, that energy, and if you're having an off day and you go into something that's really energetic, a lot of times your off day goes away, right? But when you're at home and remote, I think everyone around the world has started to feel this year, is when you're remote, sometimes you don't get that same like boost, So
Yeah, I would compare it to like being in different cities. Like you go to New York, you almost can't be lazy. Like everyone's moving, so you got to do something. You go to you're in a smaller town. You kind of vibe just like the people around you. And
yeah,
slower in a small town, and you'll notice the type of companies that pop up from here. Like you go to Silicon Valley, a lot of people do move there, but it's just because it's there. It's just that energy that creates it.
yeah, totally. So let's get some live questions. I got a decent one. So you're an international student. This is JH Hemmel. I'm just going to summarize it. You're an international student. You're coming to the United States, so international to the U.S. You're coming here to work, or you're coming here to study in Texas, and you want to know if you can work remotely. My intuition is yes. You find something like Upwork, Freelancer, or any sort of freelancing website that helps you actually get freelance clients, so that you're not necessarily working as a citizen of the US or getting sponsorship to work here. But I believe if you are at a university, that you can actually work at jobs because you're a university student. But I'm actually not positive about that. Do you know that answer, Dennis?
No, I'm not sure either. I wouldn't know that one.
Yeah, but I think that's one of the things that really drew me to doing software, as well as keeps me on software, is the internet, is being able to work anywhere in the world. So I would imagine that wherever you're from, sorry, I don't know where you're from, JH Himmel, but wherever you're from, there's probably a freelance website out there that you can start with now. So if you're starting school in the fall, you might as well start now and try and build up some reputation on that platform, so that working remotely is absolutely something you could do. I would actually recommend that to anyone who's going to be starting in the fall for a university of some kind, right? Might as well work remotely and get that skill down now versus sometime in the future when you need it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You had your Joe Rogan question, by the way.
Oh, I did.
Khalib. Yeah, he says, do you think watching Joe Rogan will help me with my English? This one's for Justin, so I have to stay out of it.
No, Dennis, you are way more qualified than me because I only really speak English. So you speak, what you said, 3 languages, right?
Yeah, but 2 of them are pretty similar. It's Russian, Ukrainian, and English.
Got it.
Yeah.
So do you think Joe Rogan helps your English?
So I don't have that issue just because I've been here for so long. But I would easily say yes, just because I'm now learning Russian. I can speak it, but I have a pretty bad accent. Like I speak to my in-laws, and it can be pretty tough. They'll make fun of me for certain words that I'll say. So what I do is I watch Russian movies.
Got it.
But picking up on that, you begin to think in that language. Absolutely, it's going to help. It doesn't matter what you're watching. It can be cartoons. Yeah. As long as you're just constantly hearing that, there's words that I know of, but don't come naturally to me, let's say in Russian now, just because I don't use them. So I don't exactly know, how to apply them best. Or
absolutely. I think along those lines, the thing about Joe Rogan's podcast is he gets a lot of intellectuals on there that say incredibly big English words that I'm a native English speaker. I'm like, what did they just say? So that's another thing that's really cool about it, is because it will show you some words that if you are learning English and you're using those words in your regular vocabulary, you're going to floor some other native English speakers, like I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I think Joe Rogan has so much content that I think you will get a lot from it. But also Joe himself speaks in pretty plain language, not because he's unintelligent, but it's because he is intelligent. He is able to drill it down into plain language because it's incredibly hard to take a complex thing and put it into plain language sometimes, which is where those big words that I mentioned, Joe often brings it back into that plain language really well. I think that's one of his geniuses that he does as a podcaster himself. But I'm always floored. I'm sure you get this sometimes that people that are learning English and learning how to code at the same time, they come on and they're like, "Oh, I don't know English that well, but I was able to do all the things you did." It's like, wow, that's amazing. I applaud those people big time.
Yeah, that's definitely impressive.
Here's another one. This is I'll make it more of a general question, but I'm answering a Jith's question. Like, how much time do you think a beginner, let's say they know some basic Python, how much time would a beginner need to take to learn Django to the point where they can deploy an application? What do you think?
Well, the obvious one is going to be it's different for everyone, but I'll just refer back to my situation. I spent probably 6 to 8 hours after work every day for, to deploy it. I guess to have like a pretty simple application. I think a month would be enough, and it doesn't have to be as much as I did. Like you can get something up and running and put it together. Like realistically, I can show you how to do that in a week from nothing. Right. Like if I'm there guiding you, it doesn't really take that much. But to learn it yourself, if you're applying a couple hours a day, I think a month should be reasonable. Just depends on how in depth your application is. Like I didn't deploy mine until I had like all of the functionality in there, and that kind of made it more difficult because that meant I had more libraries installed, which with Heroku means you have to maybe install certain things that kind of change up how you push it live. But yeah, I think a month is pretty safe to say, right? If you're consistent at it.
Yeah.
Even though it's hard to answer.
Well, so I'm still learning Django, right? Like I just posted a video on a single page Django application. Adam Johnson, a great Django developer and writer, definitely check out his work. I just posted this video. He did a single page Django application. Never even occurred to me to do that. So something like a Flask application, but in Django. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's genius. I have to talk about this. So, full credit to Adam Johnson. He's the reason I even did that video. I mentioned that in the video, but like there's all these sorts of things, these little bits of pieces of Django that I still overlook, that I'm still learning. So this is 9-10 years on of mastering Django, or at least attempting to master Django. So I think the process never really stops when it comes to software. It's a revolving door of challenge. But to get a working application that gets you like pumped, a month I think is reasonable. Maybe less time, like you said. But I think a month is reasonable to get you to this point where you're like, wow, I'm going to commit even more time to this and doing more projects and all that. And that I think is a good answer, Dennis. And I think we could both agree on a lot of those things. Yeah. So good question too. I don't get that question that often. One of the questions that frustrates me the most, I'm not sure if you've heard this one very often, but is which is better, Django or Node? And it's like comparing Python and JavaScript. Literally, that's what you're comparing. Actually, you're not comparing a front or a back-end framework or a full framework, a full web application framework to another web application framework. You're comparing two runtimes, and that's not a good comparison. So, but anyways, I'm sure you get those funny questions a lot.
Yeah.
Django Mezzanine. Sorry, I just wanted to address this one before we keep going. Django Mezzanine is a CMS thing, and I don't think it's worth learning. I think you should build your own content management system and then jump into something like Django Mezzanine. Not just circumventing Django and just doing Django Mezzanine. If you're going to use content management, if you want to learn something that's going to be valuable, WordPress is the way to go if you're just going for CMS. But if you want to learn Django and then move into CMS later. That's my opinion, at least. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would agree with what you're saying as far as the content management system, but I was going to ask you on that question. I have no idea what that is. Mezzanine? I've
Oh
never heard
yeah,
of
so
that.
it's a Django package that allows you. I mean, it's almost like a WordPress like thing, but written in Django, or created in Django. So it's not really familiar Django though. Maybe it's changed over the years, and people seem to like it too. But I think if you're gonna use Django, you should use it for what it excels in. It doesn't excel in recreating WordPress because nobody that is a professional Django developer spends a lot of time trying to recreate WordPress, with the exception of the people that built Django Mezzanine, which this is not meant to be an offense to them at all. I'm sure it's a project that they care a lot about, and they should continue to work on projects they care a lot about. What I'm saying is Django really excels at building things mostly from or almost from scratch, using a lot of the batteries that Django has to build it, versus like essentially buying something or using something that already exists, right? So I think this way with e-commerce as well. So I teach people how to build Django e-commerce applications because you can use something like Django Oscar. I think that's the e-commerce thing, but it's much better to understand all of the things that are going into it than to just use somebody else's code, if you're just trying to install their code and you don't really know Django. If you know Django, then you can learn a ton from their code because they've done a lot of great work in there. So that's at least my thoughts on using those full-fledged packages that are essentially plug and play that are written in Django. So, yeah.
Just looking through some of those comments myself here, trying to see what.
Yeah, Django and React, love it. I think it's a great combination, but Django doesn't need React. React doesn't need Django. So I think it's a great combo, though. I really like it. Dennis and I were joking on Twitter that it's or I was joking with him that it's the Dr. Pepper, or was it Dr. Pepper? No, DJ Pepper, excuse me, not Dr. Pepper, Django.
Oh yeah, I'm still curious about that. Like, what do you think is the correct thing for that stack? There's no official term, right?
No, I don't think so. It's just Django and React, because not everyone uses Postgres for Django either. Some people use
Yeah, true.
MySQL. Some people use MongoDB, but like the mean stack and the MERN stack, it's just a nice acronym. But even those things, if you use Postgres, what do you call it? The Pern stack. I don't know. So those acronyms are fun and all, but you need to. I don't know if it's worth saying. I think most people say Django and React and just sort of assume what the database is going to be. So, yeah. The requirement to get a job. Well, this is actually an interesting one because a lot of places don't know what they're hiring for. I recently saw a job post, or I see this a lot because Kubernetes developers love to post it. There's job listings from reputable companies that say they want 8+ years of Kubernetes experience. Kubernetes, I think, was released in 2017. So maybe 2016, but certainly not 2012, right? So, a lot of companies have that as a problem. So in my opinion, why not reach out to these HR people and be like, hey, I'm writing an article and I saw that you guys have listings for this. I don't think I'm qualified for it yet, but I think it'd be useful for me and others to learn more about what the qualifications are to work at your organization, and do that 30 times. Not only will you have a really clear understanding of how to get a job there or at these organizations, or specifically how to get jobs, but also an understanding that not everyone knows what it is they're trying to hire for. And well, it sort of gives you a roadmap too of things that you can learn. So that I think is another useful thing. So you could get a job after a month of knowing how to write software. I mean, if people believe you, if you can actually sell your skills or your dedication or your grittiness, I think you can absolutely get a job practically anywhere. It just really depends on the job you're shooting for. Because if you're shooting for a $200,000 plus job for any sort of software role and you don't have $200,000 plus skills, you're not going to get that job. They're not even going to answer your email type of thing. So it does depend on what it is that you're going for, but I think the vast majority of people can get these jobs if they're willing to show that they'll put in the work. And just because you don't get the job right now or the first time you try doesn't mean you won't get it by the 10th or 20th or 50th time you try for that same job. So that's another aspect of this is like, if you don't stop trying, then you'll eventually probably get the job that you really, really want. It just might take a lot, you know?
I really like that idea of the article. Like, you're getting your foot in the door, you get to meet these people, you're showing initiative. And in most cases, I mean, I don't know if you watched Joshua Fluke. I've seen his stuff a few times. That, you know, people have different opinions on him, but he talks about like the expectations that these postings have, and a lot of them are written by HR people. So they just kind of have this like wish list, but they'll take if you have like half of that, if sometimes less than that. So by doing that, if you're taking that initiative, like I guarantee you're gonna have like, unless you really don't meet the qualifications, or for some reason you don't click with them, like you just did something that a bunch of resumes didn't do. Like, people handed in their resume, you went above and beyond. Like, that's my recommendation. That's why I talked about that internship. Like, offer to serve coffee. You know, I'm now going on that side tangent, but yeah, just get your foot in the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the other thing is, if you already work at that organization, which is what it sounds like you're mentioning, if you already work there, it's going to be a lot easier for you to stop by the development team or whatever team you want to join and be like, hey, how do I become like you? And just don't waste their time. Don't ask for too much. You have to offer value to get value. But being like, hey, is there a book that you recommend? That's a really low hanging fruit of a question that if you read it and then come back to that same person who recommended it to you, be like, hey, I finished that book. I'd love to have a discussion with you on it if you have time, but do you have another book to recommend? And then you read that book and you just keep doing it. Eventually that person's gonna be like, hey, I want this guy on my team. The other thing is, if a company is posting a job posting for a hiring, that means that they are not that well connected in that arena, in my opinion. Now, this is not true for like Google and Facebook and these really big companies that have HR departments, that have a bunch of recruiting, that they're out there on universities and stuff like that. I'm more referring to like a medium-sized business, a small-sized business that has a job posting for a specific role. That means that they don't know that many developers, right? So if they're looking for a Django developer, for example, that means they don't have a network of Django developers that they can reach out to and say, hey, do you know somebody who's looking for this job? So that means that there's something that they don't know, which would be really interesting to also reach out and ask them, hey, what is it that you don't know about Django or Python or JavaScript or whatever it is that I might help you find out? That's another thing that you could come in.
Yeah.
Because like right now, I know I see this all the time on Twitter as well, is I see friends of friends that are looking for Django postings. And the only reason I know about it is because they're friends of friends. And so I also know if I'm looking for a Django developer and I don't want to just hire a freelancer on Upwork, I have a number of friends I could reach out to that would be able to introduce me to up and coming Django developers. So that goes back to like building up your network, talking to these people in HR, doing interviews as much as you can. At least that's what I think. So, yeah. Whew. Dennis, this has been good, man.
Yeah, almost 2.5 hours almost.
2.5 hours. Yeah. Geez, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. And you know, we've had glitches, but hey, that's how we get better. This is true. I think Riverside might have some sort of active part in this as well, of some of the glitches that happen. So I'm going to have to talk to that team. But the main thing is that we were able to do a live video broadcast. I honestly don't know how many people do live video broadcasts. So it's really cool that we were able to do this together. And hopefully many more to come. So
it's an honor for me, man.
Yeah.
I was super excited. Like, I just got to do one with Brad now. Like my two ultimate heroes. Like, you guys are awesome. It's seriously an honor for me.
Yeah, I want to do one with Brad too.
Yeah.
I think like at some point we both will. There's so many people I want to talk to. I'm gonna have to make a laundry list of like my ideal who I would want to talk to on here. And of course, if you're watching this and you know somebody and you want to arrange an introduction, please do. I would, for both of us probably. I think these conversations are potentially really, really good for everyone involved, right? Now, when you're the one coming on, maybe it's not super great for you because you're sitting here, you're answering these questions. Maybe sometimes it's taking too much out of your time of other things that you could be working on. So Dennis, I really do appreciate you jumping on here for several hours. And I really can't wait to have a studio where I can fly you in wherever I am, wherever you are, and we could sit down and have the same conversation and answer questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. That's great to hear. So yeah, Dennis, I mean, do you have anything to add? Do you want to tell people like how they can find you, where they should look, those sorts of things? I do.
Yeah. So mostly Django on YouTube, just Dennis Ivy, kind of going more into web-based stuff in general, covering everything here now, but you can check out my website, just a portfolio site that I built out, but yeah, just connect with me there.
Dennis
Justin and I kind of overlap in content, but I think we both provide value on its own.
Yeah. I think, we talked about this before is like, there might be one video that convinces somebody to keep going. And I'm definitely not going to be the only one that does that, right? You're not going to be the only one that does that. There's going to be so many of us, but, so we got your website, we've got your YouTube channel that's also in the descriptions too. So make sure you guys subscribe to Django or to Django, to Dennis's stuff. Check it out. He's definitely well on his way. So thank you very much, sir, for being on here. And
thank you.
We will absolutely chat soon. Thank you for all of you guys that are watched, listen to this. Please give me feedback, suggestions. This is early days for the podcast and really looking forward to seeing where we go from here. So thanks again, everybody, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Alrighty, take care.
Oh, Dennis, I totally already cut you off. I ended the stream. Oh, no, I didn't. It says, "Are you sure you want to end?" So everyone got to hear that one too. That's funny. So